Chapter 6:24. Lei Xingfeng said, "What contribution?" The blackbird caught a few times and said a lot of people came. They were all lured to the side by the bird, allowing Mist to escape. Caw-caw, isn't the bird awesome? It didn't make any sense. It made everyone confused. Lei Xingyao walked to Lei Xingfeng and hugged his arm. I don't know what happened, but a lot of people suddenly came to the cultivation garden. The blackbird and I were in the cultivation garden. We were almost discovered, but the blackbird was smarter. It lured those people away, and I brought it back to the mirror world. Lei Xingfeng nodded, and the Burbuda is not bad. You did a good job this time. The blackbird raised its small head and said, "Of course, the bird is awesome." "No, Grandpa, you can't just praise it." Lei Xingfeng said, "Then what do you want?" The blackbird said, "I want a reward. I don't want a compliment." "I also want a compliment. Birds like compliments." Lei Xingfeng laughed. "Okay, I'll reward you with a piece of shredded meat." The blackbird cawed and shouted, This is too unfair to the bird. It's just a piece of shredded meat. Caw, shredded meat? Caw, Grandpa, you're too unfair. Such a big contribution, and you only reward me with a piece of shredded meat? Caw, I'm so angry, I don't want to live anymore." Everyone laughed. Lei Xingfeng said seriously, "You don't want it?" The blackbird cawed a few times. "At least give me a piece of big thunder crystal. What's a piece of shredded meat?" "Do you think the bird doesn't know anything?" Lei Xingfeng said, "You don't want the shredded meat. Won't you regret it? Just a piece of big thunder crystal?" The blackbird obviously felt that there was a problem. It's a pity that its small head couldn't understand it. It said, "Caw, caw. No, no regret. Caw. Why does the bird feel that something is wrong? Forget it. The bird still wants the big thunder crystal." Lei Xingfeng had an evil smile on his face. He took out a large thunder crystal as well as a strand of meat. This strand of meat was as thick as an arm and as long as an arm. It was a strand of meat from a star beast. The blackbird immediately understood and cried out, "Caw, Grandpa, Grandpa, you're bullying the bird. The bird wants shredded meat." Everyone laughed wildly. The blackbird was also a living treasure. It could be said that everyone was quite fond of it. The blackbird kept jumping on Lei Xingfeng's shoulder. Its eyes were about to pop out of their sockets. No matter when, star beast meat was its favorite. Lin Ling popped out from Xian Yao's shoulder. Yao Ling giggled and said, dumb bird, ing 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 ing." Lei Xingfeng giggled and said, "I want big thunder crystals, not shredded meat." "Didn't you say so?" The blackbird cried out anxiously. "Ga, ga, 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 ga. Wah wah. Grandpa, you can't do this." "Gah." Lei Xingfeng said, "All right, then you choose. Big thunder crystals or shredded meat." The blackbird suddenly quieted down. It combed Lei Xingfeng's hair and said in a strange voice, Grandpa, bird wants both." "Gah." Lin Ling sucked on a slender finger and said, "Ing ing, greedy bird." The blackbird ignored this little person, but it didn't dare to threaten Yao Ling. It knew that this was Xian Yao's favorite treasure. It continued, "Seeing the bird's contribution, give it all to the bird. Give it to the bird, give it to the bird. Give it all to the bird." Pestering was a new move the blackbird learned. Lei Xingfeng teased the blackbird, mainly to kill its pride, and said, "You're too greedy. You can only choose one." He gave a look to Xian Yao. The brother and sister already had a tacit understanding. Xian Yao giggled and said, "Brother, give it to it. This time it's all thanks to the Burbuda." The blackbird was incomparably grateful and said, "Ga, bird knows. You're the best. Ga, ga. It knew that as long as Xian Yao asked, there was no Lei Xingfeng who wouldn't agree. Lei Xingfeng laughed. "All right, since little sister said so, then I'll give it all to you." The blackbird was very polite. It first thanked him before swallowing the big thunder crystal. It directly put this thing into its body and wouldn't touch it for the time being. It also knew how to store things. It grabbed a shred of meat in its claws and directly flew to the roof. It tore and ate it bite by bite. This thing was definitely a great supplement to it, better than anything else. The reason why its strength increased so quickly was because it ate the star beast meat. Lei Xingfeng asked, "Little sister, how's the harvest?" Xi and Yao said excitedly. So much, so many good things. Luckily Xiao Ling was here, or else I wouldn't have been able to find some spirit herbs. Hee, that cultivation garden, if they found out that so many spirit herbs were missing, they would probably cry, hee. She was really happy. From the last time Lei Xingfeng brought her there until today, one could imagine how big her harvest was. Lei Xingfeng said, "Don't worry. In the future, I'll probably find a suitable cultivation garden for you." Mingzhe Alliance has a prohibition main hall and a medicine main hall. They're both rich and overbearing. Let's slowly explore. Wu Yang said, "A Feng, in the future, you can arrange for some disciples to enter Mingzhe Alliance. No matter which department they enter, I believe they'll definitely gain something." With the rise of Lei Xingfeng's position, he would always find a suitable way to arrange people from the secret sections. Now, there was still a problem, mainly because the cultivation of the people in the secret sects was too low. Lei Xingfeng said, "I can't stay here for long. After I'm done, I'll go back." Wu Yang said, "Okay, with you and Mingzhe Alliance, we'll have an excellent foundation. Everything can be done slowly, don't be impatient." Gucci also said, "Yes, don't be impatient. Some things don't need to be too rushed. The development of our secret sects needs time." Thunderstorm said, "Be careful." Lei Xingyao said, "Brother, this time I got so many spirit herbs and spirit medicines. I plan to refine some high-level medicines and give them to you in the future." Lei Xingfeng nodded and went to warn Jean Daya and the others. Then he turned and left the Mirror Realm, returning to his home in Mingzhe Alliance. Just as he walked out of his room, he saw AI Chi standing outside. He said, "Hey, why are you here?" AI Chi smiled bitterly. "Brother, this time I'm not here to beg you. I'm just here to invite you to a gathering. Don't be so nervous." He was wearing a Prohibition Master's uniform, so he knew this guy was punished. If it wasn't for his background, he probably wouldn't even be wearing this uniform. Lei Xingfeng said, "Gathering? What gathering?" AI Chi said, "Just a few friends having fun, nothing big." Lei Xingfeng said, "Okay, I'll go." He didn't want to offend AI Chi, and he was also interested in their gathering. Anyway, it wasn't a bad thing to know more people. As the saying goes, one more friend means one more path. One more enemy means one more wall. He understood this logic, especially since he liked to know more about the Mingzhe Alliance. He could get a lot of information by interacting with these rich kids. AI Chi's face was full of smiles. He said, "Ah, brother is the best. I'll go today." Lei Xingfeng asked, "Do you want to bring people?" AI Chi also knew Kutch and the others. He said, "Of course, we can bring people. We'll just go for 10 days and relax." Xi and Feng asked curiously, "Only for a dozen days? Where are we going?" AI Chi said, "What's so fun about the headquarters of Mingzhe Alliance? We'll go to the outer continent." Lei Xingfeng was surprised. "The outer continent?" AI Chi said, "It's a hunting ground, very fun. Let's go, I don't want to stay in Mingzhe Alliance for even a day, it's so annoying." Lei Xingfeng called Kutch and the others to follow. The two chatted while walking. AI Chi said, "You can bring more guards. Restriction Masters can bring more than 10 and less than 20 guards. Do you want me to recommend some experts?" Lei Xingfeng said, "There's no rush. Let's wait a while. After all, I've only been here for a short time, and I'm not familiar with a lot of things." Kutch said, "A phone. 10 days might not be enough. You still have to go to Master Green Rock to get your reward." Lei Xingfeng smiled. "A few days later or a few days earlier won't be a problem. This isn't a mission." Kutch nodded and didn't say anything. AI Chi said enviously, "Master Green Rock has always been generous. You must have gained a lot this time. I'm really envious." Lei Xingfeng smiled. "You don't lack anything. What's there to be envious about?" AI Chi sighed and said, "I'm not envious of your reward, but I'm envious of you. Being promoted to Master is a very difficult step. Luckily, you met Master Green Rock. I know him best. He only cares about talent and nothing else. I was so unlucky to be targeted by Master Green Rock. Even if I'm not unlucky, I'll still be unlucky." Lei Xingfeng asked curiously, "You don't hate Master Green Rock?" AI Chi said, "What's the use of hate? Master Green Rock has a very deep background in Mingzhe Alliance. I don't dare to provoke him. Even if he hated Qing Yin to the core, he wouldn't reveal any flaws in his speech. As a person with a strong background, he had received a different education from a young age. Although this guy wasn't strong enough, it didn't mean that he was a fool. The two chatted and laughed as they came to a secret teleportation door. This kind of secret teleportation door was everywhere in the main hall. Mingzhe Alliance managed dozens of continents, so transportation had to be convenient. Secret teleportation doors were the most convenient means of transportation. There were thousands of them in the main hall alone. It was very convenient. AI Chi brought Lei Xingfeng to a continent through the secret teleportation door. This wasn't a resource-based continent, but a continent for Mingzhe Alliance cultivators to relax. There are mountains and rivers here, and there were all kinds of beasts and animals. It was a continent full of vitality. Coming out of the secret teleportation door, Lei Xingfeng couldn't help but exclaim, "There were mountains, rivers, forests, and grasslands here." On a hill not far away, there was a beautiful building. On the grassland not far away, there were countless animals wandering in groups. There were many hidden beasts. Rumbling sounds came. Lei Xingfeng looked back and saw countless black horses galloping over. Chapter 625. This horse was a little different from the ones he had seen in his previous life. It was 3 meters tall and had broad shoulders and a long body. When it ran, it was extremely majestic. However, the cultivators in this world did not have much use for horses, so the horses here had never been tamed. They were all wild horses with a wild nature. The group of people made way and flew into the air. Then, they saw the wild horses galloping away. Lei Xingfeng said, "It's really a good place." AI Chi said, "Let's go. That's where the party is." The group of people flew over. They landed in the courtyard of a building. AI Chi smiled and said, "This is the villa that our AI clan uses to entertain distinguished guests. No one has come here during this time, so we can use it as much as we want." This was a very beautiful building made of bricks and wood. It was surrounded by all kinds of buildings. This villa was made up of dozens of small buildings. The building in front of Lei Xingfeng was the tallest. It was a 4-story building. It should be the main building. Kutcher and the others were guarding outside. AI Chi led Lei Xingfeng into the small building. AI Chi led Lei Xingfeng into one of the rooms. There were several people inside. After AI Chi came in, he said, "Everyone, I've brought a friend. Let's get to know each other." Lei Xingfeng glanced around and found that there were 5 people here. There were 2 young women and 3 men. The 2 women were wearing alchemist uniforms. There was also a man wearing a similar uniform. He was also an alchemist. The other 2 men were wearing restriction master uniforms. When the 2 people saw Lei Xingfeng come in, they immediately recognized that he was a restriction master. They hurriedly stepped forward and saluted. "Greetings, sir." Lei Xingfeng suddenly understood that his status was very high. Even the high-level disciples of the Mingzhe League had to step forward and salute him when they saw his uniform. He smiled and said, "I'm just here to play. I'm not here to assign tasks." He said casually. AI Chi smiled and said, "Let me introduce you. These 2 are sisters. The elder sister is called Nan Yin, and the younger sister is called Nan Xin. They are both alchemists. Maybe in 2 years, they will become advanced alchemists." Lei Xingfeng knew that these 2 women must have a strong background. Otherwise, they wouldn't be so calm. AI Chi pointed at Lei Xingfeng and said, "The person who has been in the limelight in our restriction master, Lei Xingfeng." Nanning giggled and said, "I heard about it." Not long after he entered the restriction hall, he was selected as an advanced restriction master during the test. After a few missions, he was promoted to restriction master. "I'm envious of him." "Hello, Brother Lei. I'm Nanine." "Lei?" It was Xian Feng's first time hearing such a form of address. He nodded and said, "Hello, Nanine." "Nan Xian." "I heard." "Brother Lei, I am Nan Xian." AI Chi pointed at the young man on the side and said, "He is also from the Alchemy Hall. His name is Bei Chunluan. People call him Young Master Bei. He is the most playful person among us." "Ha! Isn't that right, Young Master Bei?" Nanine and Nan Xin covered their mouths and laughed. Bei Chen Luan said, "Aren't you also called young master AI? When it comes to playfulness, I am not as good as you." The two laughed and teased each other. Lei Xingfeng nodded at Bei Chen Luan. Bei Chen Luan smiled and said, "We are a group of people who like to play. We don't like to cultivate and study every day. Haha, but we always respect those who are capable." AI Chi pointed at the two alchemists and said, "These are my good friends, Tinan and Grandpa Ma. They are both from the restriction hall. Haha, brother, please take care of them in the future." Tinan and Grandpa Ma were obviously more respectful to Lei Xingfeng. After all, they were from the same restriction hall, and Lei Xingfeng's status was much higher than theirs. Lei Xingfeng asked curiously, "What do you usually play?" Grandpa Ma smiled and said, "Sir, we play a lot. Other than hunting, we also gamble and fight with others. Sometimes we also find a small sect and blackmail them. In any case, we play whatever is fun." Lei Xingfeng was speechless. He said, "This is not the restriction hall. You don't have to call me sir. Call me Brother Lei." Although this name was shocking, it was better than being called sir. Grandpa Ma said, "Yes, yes, Brother Lei." However, it was obvious that he also liked to call him Brother Lei. Lei Xingfeng said, "How do we gamble?" Tinong smiled and said, "Brother Lei, there are many kinds of gambling fights. Some use foreign captives to gamble, and some use all kinds of strange beasts to gamble. Of course, there are also those who are not convinced and send their subordinates to gamble. It all depends on your interest." Nan Xin said, "Gambling is our most common way of playing. We can gamble on anything." Lei Xingfeng smiled and said, "How do we calculate the wins and losses?" AI Chi said, "Usually, we use precious materials as the stakes. If you are good, you can even win good things like spirit objects." Xian Feng's interest was piqued as soon as he heard about spiritual objects. This was something that could only be found by chance. It was a huge stroke of luck, yet these fellows were actually using it to gamble. He laughed. "I'll see it when I have the chance." AI Chi said, "That's easy. In a few days, there will be a gambling fight. We can go and watch. We can also participate and place our bets." Lei Xingfeng smiled and said, "Okay, we will go and take a look in a few days." AI Chi said, "What do you want to play today?" Grandpa Ma said, "Let's go hunting. The weather is good today. Let's go out and relax." "All right, let your chef go too. He can also barbecue in the wild." AI Chi said, "No problem. Let's go hunting." Ordinary people went out happily. Lei Xingfeng noticed that these people's cultivation was not very high. They were basically perfected monarchs. However, the guards they brought were mostly heaven monarchs and Dao monarchs. Grandpa Ma saw Lei Xingfeng bring 4 Dao monarchs with him and said, "Brother Lei, you still have a quota of guards, right?" Tinong smiled and said, "I think so. I just heard that Brother Lei was promoted. I don't think you have enough guards." Nan Xin said, "Really? Brother Lei, give me a few quotas." Bei Chen Luan hurriedly said, "I also want a few quotas. Brother Lei, what do you think?" Lei Xingfeng was confused and asked, "What do you mean?" AI Chi explained, "There are many experts in their families. It is a good job to be a restriction master's guard. It is easy and profitable. After a while, many people will come looking for you." Lei Xingfeng was still confused and asked, "Why are they fighting to be my guards?" In his mind, Dao monarchs were the masters of the world. Why were they here as if they were free? He could not understand it at all. Grandpa Ma explained, "There are many cultivators but few resources. Only by occupying a good position can you maintain your own cultivation. Restriction masters are the richest. They can support the cultivation of many people." Lei Xingfeng said, "Don't we get cultivation materials as long as we complete missions?" AI Chi said, "It is not calculated like that. In the Ming-Zhe Alliance, missions do not always have rich rewards and rewards. Generally speaking, the best position for cultivators who are in charge of combat is in the elite army of the Ming-Zhe Alliance. The second best position is the supervision team. The third best position is to accept all kinds of missions. Being a guard is better than being in the elite army. Of course, you have to fight to join." Lei Xingfeng said, "If I don't join and cultivate with my own ability, Can I? Grandpa Ma smiled and said, Of course you can. However, if you can't gather all the materials you need, you won't be able to advance. Who can stand that? After reaching the Lord of Heaven, you need too many resources for cultivation. It's impossible to gather all of them with your own strength. Once your cultivation stops, how can you continue? Lei Xingfeng said, The Ming-Zhe alliance is too big. If a cultivator cannot reach the monarch realm, it will be hard to survive. Grandpa Ma said, You don't have to reach the monarch realm. As long as you can become a peak Dao Lord, it will be easy for you to survive. However, many cultivators find it hard to continue after becoming a Dao Lord. This type of cultivator is the most common. Therefore, their ideal job is to enter an elite army or be a guard, especially a restriction master or alchemist guard. Lei Xingfeng sighed. In the Ming-Zhe alliance, Dao Lord Old Ancestor level cultivators were worthless. No wonder so many Dao Lord Old Ancestor level cultivators were cannon fodder in the battle at the Weichong mainland. If they could choose, it would be a good choice to be a restriction master's guard. AI Chi said, Brother Lei, I have people here too. If you want to recruit guards, I can recommend a few people. Lei Xingfeng said, There's no rush. I don't have any missions at the moment. I don't need so many guards. Although it was safer to have more guards, there was no need for it at the moment. Once he recruited so many guards, he would have to pay a large sum of materials. Lei Xingfeng was not rich. He had a secret sect behind him and was also a big consumer of materials. He did not want to waste all his rewards on guards. This was helping the Ming-Zhe alliance to raise people. He was not willing to do so. Grandpa Ma and the others were a little disappointed. However, there was still hope. Since Lei Xingfeng was not willing to recruit guards immediately, they would build a good relationship with him first. When ordinary people came to the grassland, Lei Xingfeng looked around and saw countless animals walking on the grassland. There were all kinds of herbivores and carnivores. There were so many of them that it was shocking. The so-called hunting was very simple for them. They were all cultivators with amazing strength. It was not difficult for any one of them to come out and kill all the animals on the grassland. Therefore, they had a rule when hunting. They could not use any skills and could only use cold weapons to hunt. Moreover, they could not kill on a large scale. They could only choose the animals they needed. Lei Xingfeng had learned how to hunt since he was young. Of course, he was no stranger to hunting. He was in the mountains, and this was a plain. It was easier to hunt. After hearing AI Chi's explanation, he knew that hunting here was purely for fun. It was not difficult for cultivators to hunt, even if the difficulty was increased. They were not allowed to use their skills and only relied on their super skills. Killing ferocious beasts was also not a big challenge. They just chose the animals they needed to eat. Lei Xingfeng took a fancy to a deer-like animal. He took out a spear and threw it. The spear pierced through the air and made a sharp whistling sound. In an instant, the animal was nailed to the ground. The others also took action. Each of them took down an animal and stopped. Chapter 6:26. Lei Xingfeng smiled and said, Hunting now isn't challenging at all. Hee. If there are more ferocious beasts here, then it would be worth hunting. AI Chi said, This place is meant for us to relax. If there are more ferocious beasts, then we'll have to go to other continents to find them. Nan Yin smiled and said, We're just looking for something to eat. Saying that we're hunting is an exaggeration. I've taken a fancy to the four-horned deer. It's very delicious. Brother AI, let your chef handle it. Let's go to that river, she said as she pointed at the river in the distance. This was a large river between the forest and the grassland. It was about 30 to 40 meters wide. The current was very fast. There was a gentle gravel bank on the shore, along with rocks and weeds. It was a place with good scenery. The group went to the river. Soon, Lei Xingfeng found an artificial stone platform. It should be man-made. AI Chi said, This is a barbecue platform. It was built more than 10 years ago. A large group of people were busy. There were several large fire pits on the platform. They were all built with blue stone and placed on a steel rack so that they could be unfolded and barbecued. These were all made long ago. It was unknown how many times they had eaten here. Therefore, AI Chi and the others were very familiar with it and were easily and happily fiddling with it. Some people went to the riverside to peel the skin and wash the meat. Some people started a fire. Some people took out various bottles of seasoning and began to barbecue. Several large tables were placed on the platform. The barbecue didn't require them to do anything. Kutcher and the others also sat on the side. As Lei Xingfeng's guards, they didn't need to do anything. They only needed to use their mouths. AI Chi sat while the others surrounded Lei Xingfeng and talked. From the time they came here, Lei Xingfeng found that AI Chi was overly attentive. He muttered in his heart. He didn't know what this guy was up to. With the intention of making more friends, Lei Xingfeng smiled and talked with the others. At the same time, he inquired about some information. This kind of chatting was the best opportunity to get information. Soon, all kinds of barbecued meat were served. More than a dozen prey were enough for everyone to eat their fill. Lei Xingfeng took out a few barrels of fishman wine and had Kutch distribute it to everyone. This thing wasn't available in the Ming-Zhe Alliance. The fishman wine had a special flavor, so AI Chi and the others liked it as soon as they drank it. This was good stuff. Lei Xingfeng obtained a lot of it in the past, and after so many years, he still had a lot left. Since he wanted to make friends, he could not appear stingy. Thus, Lei Xingfeng gave them some fishman wine and also took out some star beast to barbecue. Everyone had a good time eating this meal. Gradually, they relaxed, especially after drinking the fishman wine. They talked about all kinds of things, including some of the more secretive things. For example, Bei Chenlun talked about a lot of things about the alchemy headquarters, including the continent where the alchemy headquarters cultivation gardens were located. Lei Xingfeng always paid attention to this kind of information, especially after entering the Ming-Zhe Alliance. He wanted to know all kinds of information. Under his intentional or unintentional guidance, he obtained a lot of useful information. He also had a deeper understanding of the strength of the Ming-Zhe Alliance. After drinking a mouthful of wine, Lei Xingfeng smiled and said, "Our Ming-Zhe Alliance should have no opponents in this area." AI Chi curled his lips and said, "Brother Lei, that's not necessarily true. As far as I know, there are two forces that are on par with the Ming-Zhe Alliance." Bei Chenlun said, "What do you mean by on par? They are stronger than our Ming-Zhe Alliance." AI Chi said, "They are on par. We haven't fought, so who knows? I think they are okay." Lei Xingfeng hurriedly asked, "What kind of force is stronger than the Ming-Zhe Alliance?" Tenong said, "We haven't fought, so I don't know. However, I think our Ming-Zhe Alliance isn't weak." "Grandpa Ma, what do you think?" Grandpa Ma shook his head and said, "It doesn't have much to do with us. Let the higher-ups worry about it." Lei Xingfeng said, "Which two forces are it? How come I don't know?" AI Chi said, "The Buyer race, the Space Wing race. The Buyer race is similar to us. The Space Wing race is an outsider with a pair of wings. The Buyer race doesn't have a lot of people, but they are very strong. Every Buyer race member is born as a true monarch expert. They are blessed by the heavens and are born to be warriors. They have an extra pair of horns on their heads. Strictly speaking, they are also outsiders, but the horns on their heads are very short and can be hidden in their hair. It is easy to mistake them for human cultivators. As for the Space Wing race, they're a huge race that occupies dozens of continents. Their population is not inferior to ours." Lei Xingfeng was secretly shocked. The Buyer race was on par with the Ming-Zhe Alliance, and was even slightly stronger than the Ming-Zhe Alliance. It was obvious that they were not to be trifled with. Are the Buyer race and the Space Wing race near or far from our sphere of influence? AI Chi smiled and said, "They are very far. It's fine. The Ming-Zhe Alliance and them are on the border continents. We have fought with them before and have grasped some information. For now, we don't have any major conflicts with them. However, the places near them are heavily guarded by the Ming-Zhe Alliance. Brother Lei, our restriction main hall will often issue related missions. We will set up many restriction formations on the frontline continents to block their possible attacks." Lei Xingfeng muttered a few words about the Buyer race and the Space Wing race before putting it aside for the time being. Currently, these two outsider races were still very far away. It was enough to know. There was no need to continue worrying about them. Lei Xingfeng smiled and said, "Perhaps there will be missions soon." AI Chi said, "You are a restriction grandmaster now. There are some missions that you must complete. Because a restriction grandmaster has a very high status and treatment, the restriction grandmasters of the Mingzhe Alliance have many missions to complete. Brother Lei, it won't be easy for you in the future." Lei Xingfeng didn't mind and said, "It's fine. The more I do, the more I will reap." He understood that if he relied on his own strength to gather materials and construct restrictions, he simply didn't have the capital to do so. Large-scale restriction formations required countless materials. If one wanted to familiarize themselves with these formations, they would have to practice and refine components and set them up. By relying on a large organization, he would be able to come into contact with many restriction formations. He could also rely on the organization to obtain materials. This way, his understanding and creation of restrictions would be greatly improved. Through restrictions and his own Lei Xingfeng vaguely felt that restrictions and his own Lei operated on similar principles. However, the practitioners in this world didn't seem to realize this. At least, until now, none of the cultivation methods he practiced had mentioned restrictions. According to Lei Xingfeng's guess, restrictions and Lei definitely had similar principles. As long as he could figure it out, his cultivation would advance by leaps and bounds. In other words, as long as he learned restrictions well and used them well, it was very likely to promote the development of his own cultivation. Moreover, the deeper his understanding of restrictions, the faster his cultivation speed would be. AI Chi said with admiration, "Brother Lei, you are amazing. When I heard the word mission, my head hurt. Alas, this is really bad. I originally thought that after completing the mission, I would be fine. I didn't expect that there would be additional missions. Consider my bad luck." Bei Luan said, "It's okay. Didn't I also get demoted from an advanced pharmacist to a pharmacist? After 5 or 6 years, everyone will forget about it. At that time, I will think of a way to get promoted again. I will wait for another 2 years and return to an advanced pharmacist. It won't be too difficult." Lei Xingfeng looked at Bei Luan speechlessly. He didn't expect this guy to be the same as AI Chi. He was also demoted because he was caught red-handed. Tinong said, "Why bother? As long as he can stay in the headquarters of the Mingzhe Alliance, he can do whatever he wants. He is free." Lei Xingfeng said, "If you don't complete the mission, you won't be rewarded, right? As for the materials for your advancement, forget it." He suddenly realized that these second-generation ancestors might be third-generation ancestors or even 10th-generation ancestors. How could they lack materials? With such a deep background, the materials for advancement should have been prepared long ago. A few of them laughed. They understood Lei Xingfeng's words and knew why he said forget it. They might lack other things, but they would never lack materials for advancement. Moreover, their elders wanted them to advance as soon as possible. Not to mention the materials, they had already prepared everything. AI Chi said, "It's not about the mission. It's about fighting for status. Everything else is not a problem." Grandpa Ma chuckled and said, "Don't worry about the problems. The biggest problem is we all want to live a carefree life. We don't want anything else." "Annoying." Nanning giggled and said, "Grandpa Ma is lazy." Grandpa Ma smiled and said, "Everyone is the same. We are all lazy. AI Chi is considered good among us. Look, didn't he get taken down by others? There are many people who look down on us. They're just jealous." AI Chi said, "All right, let's not talk about this. It sounds depressing. We'll go to the ice canyon in a few days. There will probably be another gambling fight. What good things did you bring to gamble with them this time?" Grandpa Ma raised his hand and said, "I'm just going to watch the show. I don't plan to gamble." Tinan also said, "I'm a little short on money recently. I'll just watch the show. I lost a treasure last time and got beaten up when I went back. It's very unlucky. Let's forget about it this time." AI Chi smiled and said, "All right, I'll gamble once. No matter if I win or lose, it's to get rid of my bad luck. I've been unlucky recently. My whole body is going to rot." Bei Luan said casually, "I'll gamble with you." I've found some good things recently. It's enough to gamble. Nanxian said, Brother AI, what good things are they? AI Chi said, Do you know Bei Si's spiritual item? Nanxian was shocked and said, Bei Si's spiritual item? How did you get such a treasure? Lei Xingfeng said, What Bei Si Lake? Nanxian smiled and said, Bei Si Continent's Bei Si Lake. It's a place rich in resources. However, the lake is very deep. Even Tao Lord ancestors can't reach the bottom of the lake. There's a very special spiritual item. They're called Bei Si spiritual item. It's a water-type spiritual item. Lei Xingfeng was stunned and said, Tao Lord ancestors can't reach the bottom of the lake? How deep is it? Chapter 6:27. AI Chi said, It should be more than 10,000 meters or even deeper. Monarch rank experts can dive to the bottom of the lake, but there are some places that they can't. Until now, no one has been able to truly dive to the bottom of the base lake. It is said that there is an extremely long crack in the base lake. Even monarch rank experts can only move around the crack. It is very difficult to go deeper. Lei Xingfeng asked curiously, Can I take a look? Fays were all good things, but they had different uses. Lei Xingfeng didn't know what the base Fey was used for. AI Chi generously took out a crystal bottle that was half the height of a person. This bottle was rather exquisite, and Lei Xingfeng could see the restriction on the bottle. It was also very restrictive. 7 nodes were flashing, and the restriction hub was at the mouth of the bottle. There was a large ring crystal stuck at the mouth of the bottle. This large ring crystal was actually a high-grade large ring crystal. Due to the restriction covering, the entire crystal bottle was black, and the scene inside the bottle couldn't be seen. Lei Xingfeng reached out and touched the restriction hub. He accurately turned one of the restriction nodes, and the entire bottle instantly turned transparent. Lei Xingfeng asked, Is there water in the bottle? AI Chi said, This water has been nourished by the base Fey. It is excellent water. After a period of time, I will change the water. If the base Fey is placed in dirty water, the water source will be completely cleaned in a few days. Lei Xingfeng stared at the big bottle. He can now clearly see the base Fey in the bottle. It was a kind of thin, filament-like creature. There were about a few thousand green threads that were as thin as silk. They gathered and scattered in the bottle and floated around. It was rather beautiful, alive. Looking at the twisting green threads, Lei Xingfeng suspected that this thing was alive. Nanxian's expression was calm. She had probably seen too many of such treasures, so she wasn't too surprised. However, Lei Xingfeng was very interested in this and asked, What is the use of it? AI Chi said, I'm not very sure, but I know that apothecaries love this the most. Nanxian said, This thing is best used to set up the Bei Si Spirit Spring. It will be of great help to the cultivation garden. However, I don't have a cultivation garden, so it's useless to me. Lei Xingfeng said, Base Fei, old AI, if you can get it in the future, give me one too. I will exchange it with other things. AI Chi said straightforwardly, Brother Lei, I'll give you one. Lei Xingfeng asked, You have extra? AI Chi smiled and said, When I got it, there were only 2. Only the people in the alchemy hall like it. The other one is a water cultivator's treasure. Others generally don't have any use for it. It would be too wasteful to use it as a spiritual object for restrictions. It's not very powerful when used on restrictions, so it can only be used as an auxiliary spiritual object. Lei Xingfeng said happily, I have a use for it. Give me one. I'll exchange it with something else in the future. AI Chi was very generous. Since he took it out to bet with someone, he didn't care about it. He said, Okay, this is it. Take it. Lei Xingfeng thanked him and put it away. This thing would be a very good treasure if he brought it back to the Mirror Realm and placed it in the cultivation garden. The cultivation garden in the Mirror Realm had a very large area under Lei Xingfeng's care. There were many varieties of spiritual herbs and spiritual herbs. After introducing the Bei Si Spirit Spring, the quality of the cultivation garden in the Mirror Realm would increase by another level. Since coming to the Mingzhe Alliance, Lei Xingfeng had obtained a lot of good things. Moreover, There were people who specially searched the Forbidden Land for valuable things. Under the management of Lei Xingfeng and the others, the secret sect gradually had its own foundation. Although it couldn't be compared to the Mingzhe alliance, it was much better than when they first came. The two production bases of the secret sect provided a continuous supply of all kinds of food. The most important thing was that the group of ordinary people cultivated and the number of people gradually increased. According to the arrangements of Lei Xingfeng, Guqi, and Wu Yang, Lei Xingyao made a lot of medicine for ordinary people. Other than treating illnesses, it was also to improve the physical fitness of ordinary people. She hoped that the next generation would have more seedlings for cultivation. This required a lot of herbs. The cultivation garden was the focus of the Mirror Realm. Once there was a treasure suitable for the cultivation garden, Lei Xingfeng would do everything possible to get it. After coming here and getting a base spirit item, Lei Xingfeng was very satisfied. He said, "Old AI, I owe you a favor." AI Chi rejoiced. He could see that Lei Xingfeng's potential was extraordinary. To be able to become a restriction great master in such a short time, he had to grab onto this thigh. If he needed help in the future, Lei Xingfeng should be able to help him. Just for this reason, a base spirit item was nothing. The group ate and drank and spent a very leisurely day. That night, Lei Xingfeng returned to the Mirror Realm and gave the base spirit item to Lei Xingyao. Lei Xingyao was overjoyed. Lei Xingyao wasn't the happiest, but Lin Ling. When she saw the base spirit item, she almost went crazy. She was so happy that she ran around. Lei Xingyao finally calmed her down. Lei Xingyao asked, "Xiaoling, why are you so happy?" Lin Ling couldn't stop smiling. "Ying, this is a good thing. It's very helpful to me. Ying, you have to give it to me." Lei Xingfeng said, "The base spirit item can form a spirit spring. I want to put it in the cultivation garden in the Mirror Realm. All the herbs can benefit from it." Lin Ling waved her two little hands. "Please don't. It's too wasteful. Ying, give it to me. Give it to me." She wriggled her body and started to act coquettishly. Lei Xingyao smiled and comforted her. Okay, Xiaoling, I'll give it to you." She was very obedient to Lin Ling. Lin Ling flew to Lei Xingyao's little face and kissed Lei Xingyao's forehead. "Sister is the best." Under Lei Xingfeng's dazed gaze, the base spirit item was put away by Lin Ling. Lei Xingfeng said, Okay, since Xiaoling likes it, then give it to her. Let's see if there's a chance to get another one in the future." The two talked for a while, and Lei Xingfeng rushed back to the base. He didn't dare to stay in the Mirror Realm for too long. No one would notice if he went back and forth in half an hour. The next morning, Lei Xingfeng came out of the house. A thin mist shrouded the grassland and forest in the distance. The sound of flowing river came from not far away, and the chirping of birds could be heard. Lei Xingfeng walked along the road. It was rare for him to go out for a walk. Breathing in the fresh air, Lei Xingfeng felt very good. Guqi and the other three followed behind Xi and Feng. During this period of time, the four of them had formed their own opinions of Xi and Feng. Seeing Xi and Feng doing well, they had originally planned to live a peaceful life and get some materials, but now the four of them had decided to work hard. They were lucky to have met someone who didn't live up to their expectations. With their status, even if they couldn't leave, it would be fine if they got rich, but they could only endure it bitterly. Now that Lei Xingfeng was doing well, they also benefited from it. In just a few missions, they earned quite a lot of materials. Of course, the four would become serious and respect Lei Xingfeng. Even though Lei Xingfeng was only a Heaven Monarch Master and was much weaker than them, Lei Xingfeng was a restriction master. His status was much higher. In the Mingzhe alliance, Dao Monarch level masters really weren't worth much. There were too many of them. Lei Xingfeng had observed that most of the Dao Monarch level ancestors in the Mingzhe alliance were elementary Dao Monarchs. About 60% to 70% of the Dao Monarchs were elementary Dao Monarchs. A single elementary Dao Monarch level ancestor basically used up all the high-end resources of a small sect. If they wanted to advance further, a small sect wouldn't be able to support them. It was almost impossible for them to advance to intermediate Tao monarch level. Therefore, most of the Tao monarch level ancestors were stuck at the elementary Tao monarch level. Not only did they need cultivation time, but they also needed cultivation talent. Most importantly, they needed a huge amount of resources and materials. If they could advance to intermediate Tao monarch level, it would be extremely difficult for them to advance further. If they lacked cultivation time, talent, and resources, they wouldn't be able to advance. After countless years of accumulation, the Mingzhe Alliance had a large group of elementary Tao monarch level ancestors. They were the backbone of the alliance, but they were also a group of people who were in despair. In order to advance, they were really distressed. The cultivator hierarchy was like a pyramid structure. At the bottom were ordinary cultivators, and in the middle were Tao monarch level ancestors. The higher one climbed, the fewer there were. Those who could climb to the top had to rely on the support of the lower levels. Only then could they be truly glorious. Lei Xingfeng walked to the edge of the grassland and quietly looked at the scenery in the distance. This was indeed a very beautiful place. Although this place wasn't suitable for cultivators, it was indeed very good as a place to relax. Footsteps came from behind. Lei Xingfeng looked back and saw AI Qi walking over with a group of guards. AI Qi smiled and said, "Brother Lei, you're out so early." Lei Xingfeng said, "The morning air is good, so I came out to take a breath." AI Qi said, "That's fresh. Where can the air be bad?" Ha! Lei Xingfeng immediately laughed. This was brought over from his previous life. In his previous life, there were all kinds of pollution, but there were none here. It was truly all natural, without a trace of pollution. The people here had never seen pollution and breathed fresh air every day. That was why AI Qi found this a little strange. Lei Xingfeng asked, "Where are we going today?" AI Qi said, "We received the news last night. We're going over today." Haha, we're going to gamble with them. Lei Xingfeng said in surprise, "Today?" AI Qi said, "I heard that they gambled yesterday. A guy lost 2 spiritual items and 1,000 high-quality large ring crystals. I heard that guy's face turn pale." Lei Xingfeng sighed inwardly. 1,000 high-grade large ring crystals and 2 spiritual items only turned his face pale. How rich was this guy? Chapter 6:28. Lei Xingfeng said, "Good guy. 1,000 high-grade large ring crystals and 2 spiritual items. He's so rich. I'm envious." AI Qi laughed. "What's there to be envious about? This guy's old man is in charge of the treasury, our Mingzhe Alliance's resource treasury. His old man is a powerful figure. It's a piece of cake for him to get something." Lei Xingfeng immediately decided to make friends with such a person. Of course, this was with a purpose. His motive wasn't simple. The two chatted and laughed as they returned to the front yard of the building. Bei Chenluan, Grandpa Ma, Tinong, Nanin, and Nan Xian were standing in the yard with their guards. Bei Chenluan said, "Did you receive the news yesterday? I heard that big-mouth old Buckteeth lost miserably." AI Qi laughed. "I received the news. Hee, let's go over today. Baixia deserves it. Let's go and watch the show. I'm sure he won't give up." Baixia was probably the big-mouth old Buckteeth that Bei Chenluan was talking about. He was probably the same as AI Qi. Lei Xingfeng asked, "Is it far from here?" Grandpa Ma said, "It's not far. We can get there quickly." AI Qi said, "They're in the lake. Follow the river and you'll get there quickly." Of course, with a cultivator's speed, it was indeed very fast. They just had to fly along the riverbank. After a dozen minutes, Xian Feng saw a huge lake that stretched as far as the eye could see. Beside it were dense reeds that formed reeds. Xian Feng immediately thought of his hometown, where he used to live on top of a lake. AI Qi said, "Do you see that green color?" Lei Xingfeng said, "Is it the other side?" AI Qi said, "That's the Lake Heart Island. It's quite a big island." When Lei Xingfeng flew to the edge of the island, he realized that it was completely different from his impression of it. The island was so huge that he couldn't see the end of it. There were many beautiful buildings on the edge of the island. Every once in a while, he could see a building with a small pier. There were also some oddly shaped boats docked at the pier. They were probably recreational boats. After Ai, Chi, and the others landed, they saw a 3-story wooden building in front of them. Soon, people came out of the wooden building. The few people in the lead saw Ai, Chi, and shouted, Ai, Chi, we were waiting for you. Nanine said, he is by Xia. Lei Xingfeng looked carefully. This guy really had a big mouth and old buck teeth. His rotten teeth were all exposed. His appearance was indescribably wretched. Lei Xingfeng wouldn't judge a person by his appearance, but this guy was really too ugly. Bai Xia's figure was not bad. He was fat like a bear. Different from the fatty, this person looked very majestic. He was quite tall, close to 2 meters. What was more miserable was his face. In addition, this guy liked to walk with his back bent. When he looked at people, he would tilt his head to look at them. Because of this, the air of wretchedness was overwhelming. When Bai Xia opened his mouth to speak, Lei Xingfeng was even more speechless. Such a strong man actually spoke in a soft voice with a bit of femininity. Fortunately, he didn't use his orchid fingers. Otherwise, Lei Xingfeng wouldn't be able to stand it. This person looks very unfamiliar. Aya, amazing. A restriction master. Ai Chi, introduce him. Good friends should know each other. Lei Xingfeng's hair stood on end. He thought to himself, damn, this guy's voice is amazing. It's 2F** king unpleasant. Ai Chi smiled and said, Big mouth, this is our restriction master, the newly promoted restriction master. He was personally promoted by Lord Qingyan. Lei Xingfeng, brother Lei. Then he pointed at Bai Xia and said, Big mouth Bai Xia is also a famous person among us. In the future, if you want to get materials, you can find him. He can get some good stuff. Bai Xia tilted his head and looked at Lei Xingfeng. He smiled brightly, but his rotten teeth made it hard to compliment him. Bai Xia said, just call me Big Mouth or Old Bai. You are welcome to join us. Lei Xingfeng thought to himself, join what? Join you? He smiled and said, Old Bai, nice to meet you. In the future, you can call me Brother Lei or a phone. It doesn't matter. He spoke in an easygoing tone. Bai Xia was very satisfied. He said, Okay, I will call you Brother Lei. In terms of status, Lei Xingfeng was the highest among the people present. Of course, his cultivation was out of the question. Any random guard here was a Dao Lord or a Patriarch. Among these hedonistic sons, there were many middle-grade and high-grade heaven monarchs. There were even some peak-stage heaven monarchs. Lei Xingfeng smiled and said, Okay. Ai Chi was also very satisfied. He knew that Bai Xia was a rather unfamiliar person. If you looked down on him, this guy would use all kinds of methods to scheme against you. He had many tricks up his sleeves. Most people who knew Bai Xia would not dare to provoke him. He was a real villain. However, Bai Xia had one good point. As long as he liked you, everything was negotiable. Even if you called him Big Mouth or Old Buck Teeth, he would not be angry. However, if a stranger dared to call him that, he would not be polite. Bai Xia introduced a few other hedonistic sons of similar status to him. Then, he led everyone into the garden behind the wooden building. He asked someone to set up a table for them to sit around and chat. As for the attendants, they were asked to rest and eat in another place. There was no need for them to be guards here. Lei Xingfeng sat down as well. The attendants quickly served all kinds of dishes. The dishes here were also very unique. These hedonistic sons were very picky when it came to food. The so-called eating, drinking, and playing were always linked together. These guys were not very interested in learning and cultivation, but they were always very astute when it came to eating, drinking, and playing. Lei Xingfeng basically could not understand the group of people talking. Of course, he understood the words, but he did not understand the content. He only knew that it was an activity between them. The only thing he could understand was when they were talking about the bet. Ai Chi smiled and said, Big Mouth, why did you lose so badly this time? Bai Xia looked unhappy and said, I was just unlucky. However, come over here. Help me take revenge. Bai Chenlun said, I am not sure. Who did you bet with? Bai Xia said, Old man. Who else could it be? Grandpa Ma said, Isn't this kid a training maniac? Why did he bet with you this time? By the way, what did you bet on? He actually made you lose so much. Baixia said, "It doesn't matter how much I lost. I just can't get out of this embarrassing situation." Lei Xingfeng said, "Who is old man?" Ai Chi smiled and said, "This guy is very powerful. He has the highest cultivation level among the younger generation. He works in the main hall of the Ming-Zhe Alliance. He is a battle and cultivation maniac. He is already a beginner Dao Lord and loves to fight. Needless to say, even we are a little afraid of this guy." Tinan said, "This guy is a lunatic. It is rare for us to provoke him." Lei Xingfeng smiled and looked at Baixia. Baixia said, "This time, I did not provoke him. It was this kid who provoked me." Grandpa Ma laughed and said, "I think he thinks you are a sucker." "Haha, who asked you to be the richest?" Baixia said resentfully, who didn't see his face. "It is really unbearable. I don't believe it. Let's bet again tomorrow. I want to make him spit it all back." Lei Xingfeng knew that this guy was going to lose even more. At the very least, his mentality was wrong. It was very difficult to win with this mentality. Ai Chi patted him on the shoulder and said, "It's okay. I have something good. I will bet with him." Baixia said, "Don't worry about it. I will do it." Lei Xingfeng knew that with Baixia's wealth, he did not care how much he lost. What he cared about was his face. Of course, he would not let others interfere. If Ai Chi won, he would also lose face. If he lost, he would look even worse. Therefore, he immediately rejected Ai Chi's request. Ai Chi smiled and said, Okay, I can't beat you anyway. Let's just watch the show." Baixia said, "You can bet on one side. When the time comes, bet on me winning." Ai Chi laughed and said, "Okay, don't let me down." Baixia grinned and said, "How can that be? I will definitely win." Everyone laughed. They knew that this guy was still not convinced. The next day, a large group of people set off and walked along the edge of the island. About 10 minutes later, they arrived at a residence. Baixia shouted, "Old man, I'm here again." Lei Xingfeng stood at the side and watched coldly. Old man should be a nickname. This person was an extremely strong man. He looked like a boar, but his eyes shone with a shrewd light. The moment he came out, his huge aura pressed down. One had to know that this group of rich kids were all at the heavenly monarch realm. Under the pressure of the Tao Lord Patriarch's aura, they all retreated. Everyone's expression was ugly. Ai Chi said, "Hey, old man, you are too much." Old man retracted his aura and laughed. "Huh." A group of people came. "Are you going to bet? Or are you going to play the side drum?" Bei Chen Luan said, "Baspa, don't be too arrogant." Baspa looked at him mockingly and said, "Why? Are you not convinced? Why don't we fight?" Bei Chen Luan was so angry that his face turned green. He said, "Okay, you fight with my men." Baspa laughed and said, "Then what's the point of fighting? I know you have experts. What I mean is, do you dare to fight with me? Do you dare? Do you dare?" Bei Chen Luan was forced back by this fellow and could not help but retreat. Lei Xingfeng watched curiously. He realized that Baspa was indeed very overbearing and looked like he didn't care. It seemed like he was someone with a background. Nanning giggled and said, "Big brother Baspa, don't be too overbearing." Nan Exine also said, "Big brother Baspa, there are so many guests standing at the door. This is not good." Baspa said indifferently, "I don't know how long we have known each other." "What guests?" This is?" He finally saw Lei Xingfeng. Ai Chi said, "This is our restriction grandmaster, Lei Xingfeng. He is a new friend." Baspa said, "Oh, he is actually a restriction grandmaster. This is not easy. When did you make friends like him?" Chapter 629. Ai Chi said angrily, "Old man, what you're saying is wrong. What do you mean we can make friends with this kind of person? This is someone from the Prohibition main hall. We are from the same main hall. Of course we can make friends." I say, "Old man, what's wrong with you today? Didn't you just win once? Why are you so proud?" Baspa ignored Ai Chi and said to Lei Xingfeng, "Lei, you're welcome to come and play. We're used to joking around. Don't mind it." As soon as he said this, everyone's expression eased. One must know that if they were rude to Lei Xingfeng, it was the same as being rude to all of them. This kind of thing was very annoying. Lei Xingfeng couldn't help but praise him secretly. Don't be fooled by this guy's boorish appearance. He was very meticulous. One sentence from him could make people jump, and another sentence from him could pacify them. This person was very powerful. Lei Xingfeng smiled. Nice to meet you. I'm just here to play with AI Chi. Please take care of me in the future. Bathba laughed. Well said, well said. Bai Xia said, all right, enough nonsense. How are we betting this time? Baspa smiled. It's not decided yet. Let's go in first. As he said this, he gestured for everyone to enter the house. Bai Xia tilted his head and looked unhappy. He muttered, if we're betting, then we're betting. Why are we going in? Really, this old man is unhappy. The group walked into the living room. Baspa asked everyone to take a seat before saying, Big Mouth, what are you betting this time? How much do you want to bet? What are you betting on? He sat down and asked 3 questions in a row. Bai Xia said, You think I don't have anything to bet with you? Baspa shook his head. I didn't say that. You're the rich man here. You have everything. I just want to see if it's worth the bet. Bai Xia said, Of course it's worth it. Baspa smiled faintly. That's not necessarily true. If I don't think it's worth it, I won't bet with you. Huh? Bai Xia was so angry that he almost jumped up. You dare not bet. Bath said domineeringly. Why wouldn't I dare? If the item doesn't catch my eye, then no matter how valuable it is, this old man won't gamble. His intention was very clear. The things that were used to gamble had to be what he needed. This guy was a cultivation maniac. Of course, he would look for materials that he needed. Otherwise, he would be too lazy to deal with him. Bai Xia was almost angered to death. Of course, he knew what this guy wanted. He sneered and said, All right, I'll take out one item first. Let's see if you want to bet or not. He took out an item and placed it in his palm. It was a spherical piece of metal. Its color was very strange. It was a dark blue metal with silver stars twinkling on it. It looked very beautiful. Lei Xingfeng carefully analyzed it and had an idea in his heart. This thing wasn't particularly precious, but it was extremely rare. It wasn't at the level of a spirit item, but it was a necessary material for some cultivators to advance. This thing was called blue silver, and this bit of blue silver would probably require dozens of tons of, or to purify. Sure enough, when Lan Yin appeared, Ba Siba's breathing became heavy. He stared at Lan Yin for a while before nodding. Seems like you're aiming for my weakness. Good, I'll bet with you. Lei Xingfeng secretly praised Ba Siba's provocation. He had gotten what he wanted in an instant. It seemed like both of them were prepared. Bai Xia seemed to know what Ba Siba wanted the most, so he was prepared to force him a bet. Of course, Ba Siba wouldn't refuse. Bai Xia laughed and said, sure enough, you can't refuse my bet. Last time, you made the bet. This time it's my turn. Ba Siba said tyrannically, of course not. Bai Xia was so angry that he jumped up and said, why not? Why not? Ba Siba said tyrannically, why don't you let your new friend decide who goes first? Lei Xingfeng looked on excitedly. He didn't expect Ba Siba to set him on fire. Before he could speak, Bai Xia laughed and said, all right, brother Lei, you decide. Who goes first? He felt that he was more familiar with Lei Xingfeng than Ba Siba. According to his understanding, Lei Xingfeng would definitely lean towards him. AI Chi said, hey, can you guys be a little gentlemanly? How can you be like this? All right, if you let brother Lei decide, no matter who goes first, the other one shouldn't complain. Bai Xia said, of course. Ba Siba said tyrannically, I have no objections. In the time it took to say these few words, Lei Xingfeng already had an idea. The so-called who goes first was actually about fairness. Or rather, it was about fairness. At this time, whether it was Bai Xia or Ba Siba, it wasn't a good idea. Lei Xingfeng smiled and said, all right, if I decide, it's easy. However, since this problem has been handed to me, both of you have to listen to my orders. Is that okay? If not, then you can solve it yourselves. Ba Siba said tyrannically, say it, say it. Bai Xia also said, all right, we'll do whatever you say. Of course, Lei Xingfeng wouldn't be so stupid as to pick people directly. He wasn't familiar with Bai Xia or Ba Siba. It was just that Bai Xia was the first to meet Ba Siba, and Ba Siba was the last to meet them. To him, it was impossible for him to be biased. He smiled and said, All right, I'll also propose a bet. Let the two of you bet. Whoever wins will decide the bet between the two of you. What do you think? Baishia immediately cheered and said, Ah, that's a good idea. Basiba also agreed and said, All right, you propose a bet. I'll bet with Big Mouth. Everyone also cheered. Aichi smiled and said, That's a great idea. Let's not talk about who wins or loses. Let's see how lucky they are first. Nanine said, Quick, propose a bet. How do you want to bet? Lei Xingfeng realized that this group of people just liked to play. Perhaps it was because there was very little entertainment in this world, but a little trick was enough to make them very excited. Grandpa Ma said, Don't tell me we'll have to use the betting arena. Tinan said, Nonsense. How can we use the betting arena? Beichen Luan said, Don't say anything. Let's see what Brother Lei has to say. Everyone looked at Lei Xingfeng. They couldn't think of a way to bet. Lei Xingfeng took out a handful of refined metal pieces. There were about 10 of them. They were very small granules. He said, Do you see this? Everyone looked at him in confusion. They were puzzled. How are they going to bet on these granules? Baishia didn't understand and asked, How are we going to bet on this? Lei Xingfeng smiled and said, Guess if it's odd or even. Basiba understood immediately. He clapped and said, That's a good idea. Ha, I like it. Lei Xingfeng said, I'll randomly grab some granules. You guys guess if it's odd or even. Everyone immediately understood and revealed a look of realization. Aichi smiled and said, Not bad, not bad. There's no way to cheat. Roll your eyes and stare. Ha, let's do it this way. Lei Xingfeng said, You guys can decide who will guess. If he guesses right, he wins. If he guesses wrong, the other person wins. How about that? Basiba said domineeringly, Okay. I'll let Big Mouth guess this time. I don't want to be called a bully. This probability was 50/50ths. Each person had a 50/50 chance. Hence, there was no point in arguing. He was happy to be generous. Baishia rubbed his palms and said, Okay, I'll guess. Lei Xingfeng stretched out his hand. He clenched his fist and said, Okay, old Bai, guess. Is it even or odd? Baishia grimaced for a long time and finally said, Double. Even. Lei Xingfeng said, Okay, if it's even, old Bai wins. If it's odd, old Boss Siba wins. No problem, right? If not, I'll open my palm. Baishia and Basiba said, No problem. Come on. Lei Xingfeng opened his palm. In his palm, there were 2 metal granules. Baishia laughed and jumped up. He tilted his head and said, How is it? How is it? I still won. Ha 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 ha. He was in high spirits. What he wanted was face. Winning or losing did not matter. After winning this time, he felt comfortable all over. His gloomy mood instantly dissipated. Basiba touched his head and said, You're lucky. You choose the gambling method. He could not help but curse. His carefully prepared trap had been ruined. Baishia laughed and said, Very good, very good. Brother Lei is where my luck lies. Ha 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 ha. Lei Xingfeng did not want to be hated. He said, That's because you made a good choice. Basiba said domineeringly, Okay. Then how do you want to gamble? Baishia said, Wait a moment. Let me be happy for a while. Everyone was speechless. He had not really won, but he was already so proud. If he won, who knew how crazy he would be? Lei Xingfeng was very curious about how gambling was done here. He asked softly, Old AI, what kind of gambling method do you often play? Aichi said, There are many types of gambling. It depends on whether both parties agree or not. You can bet on anything. For example, you can bet on a battle between outsiders, a battle between beasts, treasures, and anything else. As long as both parties agree, it's fine. Just like your single and double guess, it's a very good gambling method. Grandpa Ma added, Our gambling methods are mostly related to battle. The most common method is to use outsiders to gamble. Lei Xingfeng said, Outsiders to gamble? What do you mean? Bei Chenluan smiled and said, You can use captives to fight. You can either lose or die. There are all kinds of tricks. You can use captives from 2 different races to fight against each other. You can even send your guards down to fight. Anything is possible. Lei Xingfeng smiled bitterly. It was really a cruel gambling method. AI Chi said, actually, the most commonly used one is the silverback bear. This place produces a type of fierce beast called the silverback bear. Of course, this kind of bear is too weak compared to a cultivator. However, it's very suitable for gambling. Lei Xingfeng said, silverback bear? AI Chi nodded and said, yes, a very interesting fierce beast. It's a bear that loves to fight. Chapter 630. Bei Chenluan said, not only the silverback bear, but also the shovel-toothed tiger, the giant crocodile, the longhorn cow, and the like. We also have another type of bet that is very common here. That is bird fighting. Trained birds fight each other and then bet on who wins. Lei Xingfeng nodded and smiled. I wonder what kind of bet old Bai will choose. After being excited for a long time, Bai Xia finally calmed down. He was also a little embarrassed. He had not really won the bet yet, and yet he was so happy. It was a little out of place. This was mainly because he had lost too badly in the previous bet. Baspa said sinisterly, are you done being happy? Then tell me, what do you want to bet? Bai Xia said, 1,000 pieces of blue silver. Baspa calculated in his mind. If he had this amount of blue silver, he would have enough to use. As long as he won this round, he wouldn't have to worry about blue silver in the future. He said, let's bet. Bai Xia said indifferently, you can do it, but I can't. What are you betting with? Baspa said tyrannically, I'll give you a chance to win back what you lost last time. I'll bet 1,000 pieces of blue silver. This was a high price. The things that Bai Xia had lost last time were worth much more than 1,000 pieces of blue silver. The main reason was that he wanted this batch of blue silver too much. Bai Xia nodded. I'll bet. Baspa said tyrannically, good, straightforward. How do you want to bet? Bai Xia turned around and said, what do you think is a good bet? Everyone expressed their opinions. Some wanted to bet on the silverback bear, some wanted to bet on the battle, and some wanted to bet on the birds. Bai Xia was having a headache. He was actually not confident. This time, he could not afford to lose again. Once he lost, he would lose all his face. After talking for a while, he still could not make up his mind. Baspa said tyrannically, hey, do you want me to propose the bet? Bai Xia said, that won't do. We have to decide. Baspa said impatiently, then hurry up. Dilly-dallying is making me impatient. Bai Xia was furious. He looked at Lei Xingfeng and said, Brother Lei, what do you want to bet? Lei Xingfeng was stunned. Why are you looking for me again? He said, Old Bai, you should decide for yourself. Otherwise, Old Bai won't be happy. He didn't want to offend Ba Siba, who knew that Ba Siba would say, that's fine too. Brother Lei, tell me. We'll bet whatever you say. Everyone looked at Lei Xingfeng. Bai Xia also said, Brother Lei, tell us, what are we betting? I'll listen to you. He felt that Lei Xingfeng's suggestion had allowed him to win this round. If he continued, he might be able to win again. Lei Xingfeng was speechless. Even this thing came to him. In his previous life, he had never gambled before, so he was really unfamiliar with gambling. Baspa and Bai Xia kept urging him. Lei Xingfeng could not refuse, even if he wanted to. He said, let me think about it. The two of them agreed and stared at Lei Xingfeng. Lei Xingfeng felt his hair stand on end. These two people's gazes were too invasive. This was a headache. What should he bet on? The key was that it had to be fair. Everyone's chances were about the same. This way, no matter if he won or lost, the two of them would not blame him. This was the way he wanted to bet. Lei Xingfeng said, how about the silverback bear? Bai Xia and Ba Siba were disappointed. They had gambled on the silverback bear countless times. There was no challenge at all. Bai Xia said, this is boring. Find something more interesting to bet on. Xian Feng was left with no choice. He spoke. All right, let's bet on the dice. Everyone was stunned. Bai Xia said, what dice? What's that? No one had ever seen such a thing before, nor did they know how to gamble. Xian Feng thought of the gambling tools from his past life. He had been forced into a corner by these fellows. Thinking about it again, he spoke, don't worry, I'll make it. Lei Xingfeng actually did not know much about making a few dice and adding a bowl-shaped object. He had only seen it before. After making it, he placed it on the table and said, this is it. Basiba curiously picked up a dice and looked at it carefully. He said, 6 sides, each with a different number of points. What's the game? Tell me, I'm very curious. Baixia said, what's this bowl for? Lei Xingfeng put the dice into the bowl and turned it upside down on the table. He shook it vigorously and said, you can guess the number of points. He explained the game. Everyone's interest was piqued. This game was very simple, but also very complicated. The simplest way to play was to see who would win or lose in one round. This was relatively fair to the two of them. The most interesting thing was that everyone could bet with the two of them. Baixia smiled and said, not bad, not bad. I want to do this in the future. It's refreshing and fast. Good. Basiba also nodded and said, good stuff. I want to prepare a gambling tool like this in the future. Very good. The two of them placed the items on the ground. Lei Xingfeng looked at them enviously. They were all good stuff. However, the people around him did not seem to care. Lei Xingfeng could not help but sigh. He was a poor man. Compared to them, he was really lacking. Baixia was the one in charge. He shook the dice cup a few times and said, 1 round to see who wins or loses. Big or small, hee. He tilted his head and looked at Basiba with a smug look. He said, choose well. Don't regret it if you choose wrong. Ha! Basiba closed his eyes. He knew that this was everyone's first time coming into contact with this game. The possibility of tampering was very small. This was a competition of luck. After a while, he pointed at Lei Xingfeng and said, Brother Lei, do you think it's big or small? Lei Xingfeng was having a headache. This guy had set his sights on him. Basiba said to Baixia, I'll find someone to say big or small. It shouldn't be a problem. No matter who wins or loses, it's all on me. Baixia was also straightforward and said, no problem. You can ask. Do you want to ask me? Ha! Everyone could not help but laugh. Lei Xingfeng waved his hand and said, don't drag me into your fight. There's no benefit and I'll be blamed. This kind of work is strenuous and unrewarding. I'm not doing it. Basiba said, of course there are benefits. If you're right, then other than the blue silver, everything else will belong to you. Lei Xingfeng's heart could not help but skip a beat. This guy was too generous. It was too extravagant. Just 1,000 big ring crystals was worth it. His heart skipped a beat. He looked hesitant and said, if I'm wrong and you lose, what will you do? Basiba waved his hand and said, if I lose, it's my bad luck. It has nothing to do with you. Unlike some people who can't even afford to lose. Baixia was furious and said, what did you say? What did you say? Are you talking about me? Basiba curled his lips and said, no one is talking. What are you afraid of? Baixia choked so hard that he could not say a word. After a while, he cried out, Brother Lei, just say it. If I win, I'll give you all those things, including the blue silver. Damn it, who's afraid of who? Lei Xingfeng's heart skipped a beat. This meant that no matter if he said big or small, at least half of the things would belong to him. If he was lucky and helped Baixia win, then everything would belong to him. Where else could he find such a good deal? He would not agree again. He would not forgive himself when he went back. He nodded and said, since you say so, then I'll do it. On the surface, he looked unwilling, but on the inside, he was laughing. The more such things happened, the better. Basiba said, all right, say it. Say it. Big or small? Lei Xingfeng realized that the hedonistic sons of the Mingzhe alliance were actually quite cute. They did not make people dislike them. They liked to do as they wished and did not do evil. If the hedonistic sons of his previous life did things that angered the heavens, the hedonistic sons of the Mingzhe alliance here were more like children. They simply liked to play. Due to the strength of their elders, they were more lazy and willful when it came to cultivation and learning. However, they were not bad people. Baixia said, say it. Lei Xingfeng said, all right, I'll say it. Big. I choose big. Basiba said, did you hear that? Brother Lei's choice is my choice. Big. Baixia did not look at it. He was actually very nervous. If it turned out to be big, he would lose. After a while, he reacted and shouted, small. It must be small. He flipped it open and immediately cheered. Damn, I won. Ha ha ha. Ha ha ha. Lei Xingfeng was speechless. He spread out his hands and said, Old Bai's luck is too good today. He killed people and beasts that blocked his way. Amazing, amazing. He praised with all his might. Everyone else also praised him. Bathsheba sighed helplessly and said, This thing really rolls its eyes. I can't help it. My luck is too bad today. Brother Lei, I don't blame you. As he spoke, he winked at Exine Feng. Such a large man winking at Exine Feng made Exine Feng not know whether to laugh or cry. But in an instant, he understood what this fellow meant. Lei Xingfeng nodded slightly and did not say anything. Bai Xia grabbed Lei Xingfeng's hand and said, Brother Lei, haha, I won, huh? Lei Xingfeng cursed in his heart. If he won, he won. Did he have to be so excited? He said, Yes, you won. Your luck is too good. Bai Xia waved his hand and said, These things are all for you. Lei Xingfeng said without hesitation, Thank you. He took them and laughed in his heart. His excitement was no less than Bai Xia's. It was different to get a large sum of money for no reason. Bathsheba saw Lei Xingfeng nod and was secretly relieved. He wanted this batch of blue silver. No matter how much he had to pay, he had to get it. Blue silver was too difficult to get. It was produced in very small quantities. Only the Mingzhe Alliance's warehouse had some in stock. It was very rare. Chapter 631. Bai Xia was happy for a long time before he finally reacted. He was too excited just now and gave away everything in one go. Even if he was rich, he still felt a little pain in his heart. However, he was still very satisfied to be able to vent his anger. A large group of people were very envious of Lei Xingfeng. This batch of things was not small, but Lei Xingfeng, an outsider, had taken everything away. Who would want such a good thing? Ai Chi said, Brother Lei, this is too good. When can I do it too? Damn, I can't stand it. Big mouth, you're too awesome. How can you be so generous? A few people expressed their envy, which made Bai Xia happy. To him, the materials were nothing. With so many people expressing their envy, it was enough to make his gloominess disappear. He laughed and said, After this round of gambling, what do you guys want to play? Bath said tyrannically, There hasn't been anything fun recently. Who found something new to play? Lei Xingfeng couldn't help but sigh. The people here lived a rather poor life. There were almost no entertainment activities. In his previous life, there were definitely many things to play. Not to mention mahjong and poker, there were also all kinds of video games. Thinking of mahjong and poker, he rolled his eyes and said, I have a new way to play. You don't have to go out and can play at home. However, it has to be played with a few people. Everyone's attention was focused on him. Grandpa Ma said, What is it? Is it fun? Lei Xingfeng said, Whether it's fun or not, it's up to everyone to decide. How about this? Let's stop here today. I'll make it. Wait until tomorrow, and I'll teach everyone how to play. How about that? Bath said tyrannically, Sure, no problem. Stay here today. Let's play together tomorrow. He called for a waiter and arranged the accommodation. Lei Xingfeng was also given a room. Lei Xingfeng returned to his room. He planned to make mahjong and poker. Before he could take out the materials, Bathsheba sneaked in and said, Brother Lei. Brother Lei. Lei Xingfeng was creeped out by him. He said, I know. No problem. Bath said tyrannically, What do you know? Lei Xingfeng said, You're here to exchange for blue silver, right? Bathsheba nodded repeatedly and said, Brother Lei, you are really smart. That's what I meant. Can you give it to me? Lei Xingfeng said straightforwardly, Of course, but I can't give you all of them. I need some too. Bath said domineeringly, You have to leave at least 600 for me. Otherwise, I won't have enough. It's best if you give me all of them. I'm afraid that if I don't have enough, I'll be in trouble. Lei Xingfeng said, That's not a problem. I'll give you 800. I'll keep the other 200. He believed that as long as he had a sample, he would be able to find the blue silver. Bathsheba was overjoyed. All right, from now on, you are my friend. Lei Xingfeng was straightforward, and so was he. After all, Lei Xingfeng wasn't an ordinary person. He was a restriction grandmaster of the Restriction Central Hall, and his status was much higher than his. Lei Xingfeng straightforwardly took out 800 blue silvers and placed them on the ground. He said, "If there are any lightning-type materials, I'll take them first." Bath said tyrannically, "Lightning-type? Oh, so you're a lightning-type cultivator. This is too rare. I don't have many lightning-type cultivators in the Mingze Alliance. All right, I'll give you all of my lightning-type materials." A large pile of materials was placed on the ground. They were all lightning-type materials. There were normal ones and precious ones. There was a large pile that Lei Xingfeng had to slowly identify. Lei Xingfeng didn't stand on ceremony and put the materials into his hidden Lun space. The transaction was quickly completed, and both of them were very satisfied. Baspa felt that Lei Xingfeng was a good friend. He didn't ask for anything and agreed to the exchange. This was a great help to him. He had been looking for these materials for a long time and finally found them in the Central Hall's warehouse. However, he couldn't get them. He asked many people to help him, but they couldn't get them. After a long time, he finally got them. Baspa left satisfied. When he left, he said, "Brother Lei, we'll play again tomorrow. Have a good rest today. Goodbye." He left with a face full of smiles. Lei Xingfeng sat on the carpet in the room. He was also full of smiles. He didn't expect to get a pile of good stuff like this. He wasn't dissatisfied, especially the 1,000 big ring crystals. These things were abundant in the Mingze Alliance, but high-level big ring crystals were relatively rare. To be able to get so many at once made him surprised and happy. After organizing the lightning-type materials, he found many materials that he didn't have. Some were duplicates, and some were precious. He let Lei Yin directly fly out for Lei Yin to devour. This way, he could strengthen Lei Yin. Because Lei Yin had the ability to choose and devour automatically, Lei Xingfeng didn't need to know what material it was. As long as Lei Yin could devour it on its own, it must be a good material. After refining Lei Yin, Lei Xingfeng began to make poker and mahjong. It was easy to make poker. Because there was no paper, Lei Xingfeng chose a type of wood. This was very special. It was extremely tough. Once it was cut and left for a few days, it would secrete a type of glue. Even if the thickness of the cut was only the poker of his previous life, when the glue was secreted and covered the surface, the quality would be better than the poker of his previous life. The only thing that surprised Lei Xingfeng was that there were wood grains on the poker. This was something that he had to cover up. After mixing a type of dye, Lei Xingfeng quickly bleached the poker. After using various methods, he obtained a set of poker that was even more exquisite than the poker of his previous life. As for mahjong, it was even easier. Because of the special refining method used by cultivators, a set of mahjong was not a problem at all. Lei Xingfeng made a set of dominoes. It was made from the bones of star beasts. The bones of star beasts were large in size, so a small piece was enough to make a set. For Lei Xingfeng, who could refine weapons and seal components, this kind of thing was a piece of cake. There was no technical skill involved. The mahjong and poker cards he made were even more beautiful than the ones made by machines in his previous life. The feel of the mahjong and poker cards was absolutely superb. The next day, Lei Xingfeng came to the front living room and casually ate a bit of breakfast. The group sat down and chatted. Baspa and Baishia's faces were flushed red. They were very happy. Baspa had obtained the blue silver, while Baishia had gained face. The two of them had a proud look on their faces. Lei Xingfeng found it funny. He was the one who benefited the most yesterday. Ai Chi said, "Oh right, Brother Lei, what was the fun thing you talked about yesterday?" Lei Xingfeng took out a deck of poker cards and said, "This is a deck of poker cards. Everyone, take a look." Everyone flipped through the poker cards. They were all baffled. They couldn't understand it at all. The numbers on the poker cards have been replaced with the words here. Everyone could understand this, but they couldn't understand Jack, preserved egg, big ghost, and so on. Ai Chi said, "This little thing is so thin. What's the use of it?" No matter how he thought about it, he could not understand. This thing could not be used for fighting, nor was it a seal component. What was it used for? Everyone flipped through the cards. Everyone was confused. They could not understand what this thing was. They did not have the concept of a game here. Lei Xingfeng took the deck of poker cards and placed them on the table. He began to explain. This was very easy. Everyone understood the content of this deck of poker cards. Grandpa Ma said, "And then?" Xian Feng introduced a few ways to play the game, and the crowd was slowly drawn in. He tried to play a few rounds with them. These people were not stupid. They learned it quickly. It was very easy to get started with poker. Even a child could learn it quickly, not to mention that they were all cultivators. After a few rounds, everyone was immersed in the game. One by one, they began to yell and shout as they began to play cards. Ai Chi, Tinan, Nen Een, and Grandpa Ma's table were playing in full swing. However, there was only one deck of poker. While the four of them were playing, the others could only watch from the side. Everyone was itching to play. There was too little entertainment here. With poker, they felt that it was very novel. Lei Xingfeng waved his hand and said, "Okay, this is poker. Let them play first. I have a toy here. Do you want to see it?" Immediately, everyone gathered around. Even the four people who were playing cards gathered around with cards in their hands. Lei Xingfeng took out the mahjong tiles. Everyone looked at them curiously. There were many small squares with various patterns on them. It was a bit difficult to explain. There were many patterns, and the game was much more complicated than poker. After carefully explaining, everyone understood it quickly. Another table of mahjong began to play. After a table of mahjong and a table of poker, Lei Xingfeng had nothing to do. Lei Xingfeng knew that once people started playing, they would soon become addicted. They would play until they forgot to eat and sleep. Lei Xingfeng could see that they were very receptive to this game. Seeing that they were playing happily, Lei Xingfeng said a few words to Ai Chi and turned to leave. Ai Chi's mind was all on mahjong, so he did not stop Lei Xingfeng from leaving. Lei Xingfeng returned to his home in the Mingzhe Alliance headquarters with the four guards. Before he could sit down, Qing Yin sent someone to invite Lei Xingfeng. Lei Xingfeng had no choice but to bring the four guards to Qing Yin's residence. Seeing Qing Yin, Lei Xingfeng bowed and said, "Greetings, Lord Qing Yin." Hai Yuanlang sat beside Qing Yin. Qing Yin smiled and said, "A phone, sit down. You don't have to be so polite." Lei Xingfeng sat beside Qing Yin and asked, "Lord Qing Yin, what's the matter?" Qing Yin smiled and said, "Can I call you here if there's nothing?" Lei Xingfeng hurriedly said, "I wouldn't dare. Lord Qing Yin is joking." Hai Yuanlang said, "This time, I called you here to give you a reward. Also, I have to tell you the treatment and responsibility of a restriction master." Lei Xingfeng was happy and said, "Thank you, Lord." He began to look forward to the reward in his heart. Qing Yin said, "In the Mingzhe Alliance, restriction masters have a lot of power. Of course, they have to pay their own responsibilities. This is a page of the Star Python record. All restriction masters' responsibilities, treatment, and responsibilities are on it. Go back and read it carefully." Lei Xingfeng said, "Yes." He took the Star Python record. Chapter 632. Lei Xingfeng put away the Star Python record. He had to go back and study it. A servant brought over 10 large wooden boxes, which contained all sorts of items required by restriction masters. Qing Yin said, "A phone, someone will deliver these items every year. As for the materials you need, you can go to the main hall's storehouse to get them. You have your own share." Lei Xingfeng thanked him as he put away the boxes. He planned to go back and see what he had obtained. Qing Yin continued, "A phone, your treatment has also increased. The number of guards can be increased to 15 to 20, and they can all be Dao Lord level experts. Of course, you will also be responsible for the materials they need to advance." Lei Xingfeng was stunned. He was responsible for the materials of 15 to 20 Dao Lord level experts. This was definitely a huge amount of materials. How could he gather them? It was too terrifying. A Dao Lord level cultivator needed an ocean's worth of materials to advance. Hai Yuanlang could see Lei Xingfeng's doubts. He smiled and said, "Don't be so nervous. A restriction master can obtain a lot of materials. Moreover, 20 Dao Lord level patriarchs are very powerful. Whatever they obtain will be yours. As long as you allocate it well, you won't have to pay much. They are not only guards, but also your subordinates. You can let them complete some missions." Lei Xingfeng let out a sigh of relief. He thought, so that's how it is. There's such a method. Not bad, I was thinking too much. He said, Where do I go to choose these guards? Bluestone said, there's no need for you to choose. Many people will come looking for you. It's not rare for us to have downward patriarchs here. Only mid-level downward patriarchs and above have status. But of course, their lives are a bit more difficult. They need more materials and more resources in order to advance further. However, given your current status and power, you probably won't be able to raise mid-level downward patriarchs. Lei Xingfeng couldn't help but smile bitterly. How many materials would it take to feed mid-level Dao Lord-level patriarchs? His Lane already had people running for their lives. When this thing ate materials, it was like a bottomless pit. No matter how many materials there were, it wouldn't be enough for Lei Yin. As for high-level or peak Dao Lord-level patriarchs, Lei Xingfeng didn't even dare to think about them. If one of them came, he wouldn't be able to handle it. Qing Yin said, the reward for this mission is also for you. However, you can choose. Lei Xingfeng said how. Green Rock raised a finger and said, first, you can directly accept the mission reward I give you. He raised another finger and said, second, you can go to the main warehouse and choose the materials you need. Of course, the quantity and variety are limited, and the quantity will be less than half of what you get as a direct reward. Lei Xingfeng asked curiously why. Qing Yin said, because the materials given to you as a reward are mostly from the Mingzhe Alliance's stockpile. Of course, these things are of relatively good quality and have a certain degree of rarity, but some of them may not be what you need. Lei Xingfeng began to feel conflicted. One was a large quantity with good quality. The other was that he could choose what he needed, but the quantity would be reduced by half. This was too difficult. Hai Yuanlang smiled and said, let me give you a suggestion. When you become a restriction master, it's better to take the rewards from emissions. You'll have a lot of things, and you'll have a lot of subordinates. Even if you don't need them, you can give them to them. After a few years, you can take what you need after completing the missions. Xian Feng thought of the Mirror World's secret door. Even if he couldn't use it, the practitioners of the secret door could use it. The key was the quantity. If compared to the Mingzhe Alliance, the Mingzhe Alliance was a rich and powerful family, while the secret door was a poor little family. The foundation of the two couldn't be compared at all. Xian Feng had to accumulate wealth now, or else the secret door would be a pauper. Qing Yin said, what's your choice? Lei Xingfeng said, I'll listen to Master Hai. I want the mission reward. Qing Yin said, let's go outside. Lei Xingfeng and Hai Yuanlang followed Qing Yin out to the courtyard. Qing Yin waved his hand, and a pile of boxes and bottles appeared on the ground. Qing Yin said, the mission reward is very generous. A Feng, you've profited. Lei Xingfeng couldn't stop smiling. He didn't check carefully and immediately accepted the items. He believed that Qing Yin wouldn't lie to him. Standing in the courtyard, Qing Yin said, a Feng, you're a lightning-type cultivator. Even our Mingzhe Alliance doesn't have many lightning-type cultivators. Lightning-type cultivators are rare, so it's good for you and bad for you. Lei Xingfeng asked, what do you mean? Qing Yin said, the good thing is that there aren't many people fighting over lightning-type materials. The bad thing is there aren't many lightning-type materials. You have to find them yourself. Lei Xingfeng said in distress, yes, it's hard. Qing Yin said, I have a piece of information. Do you want it? Lei Xingfeng said, what is it? Of course I want it. Qing Yin said, I'll trade it with materials. Lei Xingfeng was stunned. However, he reacted quickly and said, Lord Qing Yin, what materials do you want? Qing Yin said, 10 blue silvers. Lei Xingfeng was stunned again. Qing Yin already knew about the blue silvers as soon as he got them. This news spread too quickly. He said straightforwardly, okay. He immediately took out 10 blue silvers and handed them to Qing Yin. Qing Yin was very satisfied. Blue silvers weren't very valuable, but they were very rare. He had a mid-level Dao Lord ancestor who had been looking for blue silvers for a long time. He couldn't find any and had come to him for help. That was why he asked Lei Xingfeng. Hai Yuanlang was very surprised and said, a Feng has a lot of good stuff. Blue silvers are very hard to get. Qing Yin said, the news is a few monarch realm experts killed a thunderous star beast in the outer continent. It was an adult thunderous star beast. Lei Xingfeng's eyes widened. Thunderous star beast. This thing was very helpful to him. He had obtained many materials from the star beasts, but he didn't have any lightning-type star beasts. He said, can you bring me to trade for some materials? Qing Yin smiled and said, it's rare that you're a restriction master and a lightning type. You're indeed qualified to trade with them. This was the benefit of status. Otherwise, a mere heavenly monarch like him was nothing in the Mingzhe Alliance. In the Mingzhe Alliance, even a Dao Lord ancestor couldn't get a higher status. Lei Xingfeng said, where can I find them? Qing Yin said, I can bring you there now. Lei Xingfeng said, thank you, my lord. With his current level of information, it was impossible for him to get such information. Hai Yuanlang smiled and said, I'll go take a look too. Thunderous star beasts are rare and powerful. It's really hard for ordinary people to kill such a star beast, especially an adult one. It's even harder. The Mingzhe Alliance had a very high-end residential area. At the very least, only restriction grandmasters, monarch realm cultivators, and alchemy grandmasters could live in it. Qing Yin also had a residence in this area, but he usually lived in the restriction main hall. The distance between the two sides wasn't far. Qing Yin brought Xian Feng and Hai Yuanlang. The three of them slowly arrived at the residential area. Along the way, the patrolling practitioners all bowed respectfully, and in a moment, the three of them passed through the courtyard and arrived in front of a small building hidden by the trees. A few Dao Lord Realm cultivators were standing at the door. When they saw Qing Yin coming, they all bowed and said, Greetings, Lord Qing Yin. Qing Yin waved his hand indifferently and said, Is your lord here? A guard said, Yes, my lord and Lord Qing Chu are here. Lord Qing Yin, please come in. Hai Yuanlang said softly, This is Lord Ama's house. He's a mid-stage monarch realm expert. Lei Xingfeng nodded slightly and followed Qing Yin in. There were two old men sitting in the living room. Both of them had white hair and beards. According to Lei Xingfeng's estimation, these two fellows must have lived for a very long time. They were considered old monsters. Seeing Qing Yin come in, one of the old men stood up and smiled. Qing Yin, why are you here? Qing Yin smiled. Elder Da, can I come see you? Dama laughed loudly. Of course you can, of course you can. Haha, Qing Yin, it's rare for you to remember an old man like me. Qing Yin bowed again. Elder Qing is here too. Qing Chu said, Qing Yin, why are you here? Qing Yin smiled. Elder Qing, can't I come if there's nothing? I'm here to see Elder Da, he. Qing Chu curled his lips and said, Your words don't match your heart. Dama smiled. Old Qing is frank. Haha, come and sit. This is Hai Yuanlang, right? This is a stranger. Hai Yuanlang went forward and bowed. Greetings, sirs. Qing Yin smiled. This is our restriction main hall's new restriction grandmaster, Lei Xingfeng. He has amazing potential in restrictions. He just entered the restriction main hall and was promoted to restriction grandmaster. Dama and Qing Chu were surprised. One must know that in the Mingzhe Alliance, the advancement of cultivation was very common. However, it wasn't easy to advance in the restriction main hall, especially to advance to the master level. Without a certain level of skill, one wouldn't be recognized. The most difficult part was to get a recommendation from a heavyweight senior. For example, to recommend a senior restriction master, one must get a recommendation from a master restriction master. A master restriction master's position required a recommendation from a grandmaster restriction master. Lei Xingfeng was lucky. During the test, he got a recommendation. When he was promoted to grandmaster, he got a recommendation from Qing Yin. His luck was very good. Dama smiled, good. Since Qing Yin said it's good, then there's no problem. Lei Xingfeng went forward and bowed. Greetings, sirs. Qing Chu said, All right, no need to be so polite. Sit down. Qing Yin, if you have something to say, just say it. Chapter 633. Qing Yin said, I heard that the two of you killed a thunderous star beast. I'm not sure if this is true. Dima said, Aya, Qing Yin, you're really well informed. I've only been back for a few days, and you already know? Haha, that's right. We killed a thunder star beast. It was fun. We were looking for a magnetic star beast, but we didn't expect to encounter a thunder star beast. You know the result. We killed it. Qing Chu looked at Lei Xingfeng and suddenly laughed. He said, "So you came for this little guy. What a rare cultivation attribute." Dima also noticed this. He didn't expect Lei Xingfeng to be of a lightning attribute. He immediately understood why Qing Yin came. He said, "Little guy, you're interested in thunder star beasts?" Lei Xingfeng immediately stood up and said, "Yes, sir. I'm a lightning cultivator. I'm lacking in related materials. There are many materials on thunderous star beasts that I can't find. Therefore, I want to trade with you." Dima said, "Oh, you want to trade with me? You have to know that I won't be interested in anything unless it's extremely precious. What are you going to trade with?" Qing Chu said, "Old Dima, don't look down on people. The restriction main hall is an expert in collecting materials. They might have something that you need." Dima was a mid-level monarch expert. He was a powerful figure in the upper echelons of the Ming-Zhe alliance. As long as the Ming-Zhe alliance had it, what couldn't he get? He said, "Don't take out anything that I don't want. I only want to trade with treasures." Qing Yin couldn't help but shake his head. With Dima's wealth, even he couldn't compare to him. One must know that he was an old restriction grandmaster. This kind of position, if one wanted to obtain materials, very few people could compare to him. But even he found it hard, let alone Exine phone. Lei Xingfeng thought about it. He recalled the treasures he got and realized that there weren't many things that could move the other party. Of course, he also had his own treasures. 10,000-year spirit liquid. After thinking about it, this was the only thing that could move the other party. However, the 10,000-year spirit liquid was too precious. He was a little reluctant to take it out. Dima said, "Think carefully about what you want to trade with me." He smiled as he looked at Lei Xingfeng. In his heart, he didn't have much hope for what he could offer. He thought that with Lei Xingfeng's experience and qualifications, it would be difficult for him to be satisfied. Qing Yin asked, "A phone. Do you have anything good to trade?" Lei Xingfeng said, "Well, we'll only know after we see it." Qing Chu smiled and said, "This old fellow's standards are rather high, and he is also rather vicious. Little fellow, it will be rather difficult for you to change." Lei Xingfeng thought for a moment, repeatedly thinking of the good things he had. In the end, he had to admit that only the 10,000-year spirit liquid was worth taking out. The other things were not worth mentioning. For a powerful expert like Dima, as long as he knew where the good things were, he would be able to get them, unless it was something strange. Taking out a vial of 10,000-year spirit liquid, Lei Xingfeng played with it in his hand. Although he had obtained quite a lot of it, and Lei Xingfeng had said that there would be more in the future, he was still a little reluctant to part with it. This thing was the best thing for advancement. Moreover, he didn't want to reveal the 10,000-year spirit liquid in his hand. Dima, Qing Chu, Qing Yin, and Hai Yuanling all stared at the vial of 10,000-year spirit liquid in Lei Xingfeng's hand. Because it was sealed very well, they didn't know what it was. Dima said, "You plan to trade with me with what you have? Is it medicine?" This thing indeed looked like a medicine, but it was smaller than a normal medicine bottle. At a glance, it was very exquisite. Both Dima and Qing Chu knew that this thing was not ordinary. If it was a medicine, perhaps it would be good, but with just a vial of medicine, what could they exchange it for? Lei Xingfeng shook his head and said, "This is not a medicine. Sir, take a look for yourself." As he spoke, he handed over the thin vial in his hand. Dima received it and examined it carefully. He said, "It's sealed, and it seems quite good, but what is this thing?" As he spoke, he opened the seal. In an instant, an indescribable fragrance quietly spread out. Dima sniffed with all his might. His nose twitched a few times, and a shocked expression appeared on his face. Almost immediately, the seal on the bottle was restored, and then he held it tightly in his hand. Qing Chu also twitched his nose and took a few deep breaths. He said, This is F *** King 10,000 years spirit liquid." Qing Yin suddenly stood up and said, "What? 10,000 year spirit liquid?" How is this possible? Hai Yuanlan's expression was still a little confused. His knowledge could not be compared to the others present. He asked softly, "A Feng, what is 10,000-year spirit liquid?" Without waiting for Lei Xingfeng to reply, Qing Yin said, "It is definitely a treasure. It is extremely useful for advancement, healing, and prolonging one's life." A Feng actually has such a treasure. Whether it was advancement, healing, or prolonging one's life, any one of them was an amazing treasure. This thing had 3 of them in one go. It was hard to not be precious. Lei Xingfeng said in a deep voice, "Sir, can this be exchanged for materials from the Thunderstar Beast?" Qing Chu rushed to say, "I will trade with you." Dima rolled his eyes and said, "Old Qing, this is not honest. This little guy is trading with me, not you." Qing Chu said resentfully, "Didn't you say that first? I didn't say that I won't trade." Dima chuckled and said, "It's in my hands." As he said that, the bottle in his hand suddenly disappeared. Qing Chu was so angry that he jumped and said, "Hey, this little guy hasn't agreed to trade yet. You can't keep it." Qing Yin laughed bitterly and pulled Hai Yuanlang to sit down. He said softly, "Let's not talk." Dima laughed. "You can ask him if he still has this thing. If he does, you can trade with him." Qing Chu said angrily, "What do you think this thing is? It is already a great fortune to have one. How can there be a second one? I'm so angry, so angry." As he said that, he slapped his own head and said in annoyance, "I'm so king stupid. If I knew, I would have snatched its eye." Dima laughed and said happily, "Are you stupid? Are you stupid? Are you at your wit's end? Ha! Thanks to my fast hands, ha ha ha." Qing Chu said, "Humph, the best part of the Thunderstar Beast is in my hands. Hee hee, I believe that this little guy will definitely want a Thunderstar Beast heart." Dima was stunned and said, "Old Qing, you're too dishonest." As one of the owners of the trade, Lei Xingfeng could only laugh bitterly as he looked at these 2 disrespectful old men. Of course, he wanted the Thunderstar Beast's heart. If this thing was swallowed by Lei Yin, he didn't know what would happen. However, he was sure that if this heart was given to Lei Yin, his cultivation would increase by leaps and bounds. Qing Chu said, "I really need this thing. Olda, give it to me." Dima laughed and said, "How can I give this kind of treasure to you? That's impossible." Qing Chu scratched his head and said to Lei Xingfeng, "Little guy, I have a Thunderstar Beast heart and 2 thunder horns on its head. This is the essence of the Thunderstar Beast. The things they get aren't that good. They're all bones and claws. They can't be compared to what I got. Do you really want to trade with him and not with me?" Qing Yin and Hai Yuanlang didn't know what to say. Although Restriction Masters had a high status in the Bright Lake Alliance, they couldn't be compared to the old fellows in the main hall. They couldn't get a word in and couldn't express their opinions. Qing Yin was complaining in his heart. If he gave one or not, he would offend them. Dima said, "I will return all the materials I got from the Thunderstar Beast to him. In addition, I will give the Thunder attribute materials I got in the past. Although there aren't many, there are many precious things." He immediately gave a price and said, "Adding them all up, they might not be worse than yours." Qing Chu was already scratching his ears and cheeks. The 2 of them had similar status and strength, so he couldn't threaten or suppress them. This made him very unhappy. He said, "I also have Thunder-type materials. Together with all the materials from the Thunderous Star Beast, I'll exchange it for your 10,000 years spiritual liquid." Lei Xingfeng was secretly happy. Back then, he got 100 vials of 10,000 years spirit liquid. He didn't just take out a single one. Dima and Qing Chu argued until their faces were red and their necks were thick. They were like fighting cocks, saying one sentence after another. In the end, the 2 old men stared at Lei Xingfeng and asked, "Who are you going to sell it to?" Qing Yin and Hai Yuanlang had a headache. They thought that Lei Xingfeng wouldn't be able to handle it. There was only one of it, so it wouldn't be good to give it to anyone. Lei Xingfeng laughed bitterly and said, "How about this? Let's go to the courtyard and take out the items. I will choose. Is that okay?" Dima straightforwardly walked out. Qing Chu also stood up and said, "Little brat, don't worry. Once I take out my items, you will definitely want them. Ha ha, I will definitely trade." The 4 of them walked into the courtyard. Dima rushed to take out the items and said, "Little brat, you can put them away now." Ching Chu said, "What? You still want to force a trade?" Dima said, "How is that possible? Aren't I trading now?" "Little brat, as long as you trade with me this time, Dima, will remember a favor." Ching Chu said, "Remember a favor? What a big favor." "Little brat, if you want to trade with me, I will remember 2 favors." "Damn it, it's better if you don't say such empty words." Dima scolded angrily. "You old bastard, are you trying to go against me today?" Ching Chu said, "Why would I go against you for no reason? I just want to trade. It's a fair trade. What's wrong with that?" Lei Xingfeng was very nervous. He didn't dare to immediately take out the other 10,000-year spirit liquid. The two's dispute gave him a chance to obtain more items. He said, "Lord Qing, please take out the items so that I can compare them." Ching Chu was immediately overjoyed. This meant that Lei Xingfeng could also trade with him. He had obtained the best part of the thunderous star beast. He didn't believe that a lightning-type cultivator wouldn't be moved. Chapter 634. There was a large pile of items, including a thunderous star beast's heart and 2 lightning horns. Other than that, there was also a large pile of lightning attribute materials. Ching Chu had really put in a lot of effort. Some of the materials weren't even lightning attribute materials, but other precious materials. Lei Xingfeng went forward to check, and the 2 old fellows immediately became nervous. Even though Dima's mouth was powerful, he was also afraid that Lei Xingfeng would choose Ching Chu's items. Even though he had already stored the 10,000-year spirit liquid into his hidden Luan space, he also understood that if Lei Xingfeng insisted on trading with Ching Chu, he could only obediently take it out. As for venting his anger on Lei Xingfeng, that was a matter for the future. The thunderous star beast's heart, after Ching Chu's initial processing, had already lost its original shape and characteristics. It was unknown what method Ching Chu used, but the thunderous star beast's heart had actually shrunk to the size of a soccer ball. The purplish-red color was like a gem, and there were deep blue veins that seemed to be flickering with electricity. The surface of the heart had a simple seal, so there were still traces of electricity jumping about. The extremely small electric arcs made the entire heart shine brightly. Just this alone made Lei Xingfeng feel that he couldn't resist this temptation. The Leiyin in his body was about to explode, eager to try. That kind of excited desire made his heart beat rapidly. Lei Xingfeng's face was flushed red from excitement. Ching Chu grinned in satisfaction. Lei Xingfeng couldn't hide his desire at all. This kind of thing was too powerful for a lightning attribute cultivator. Lei Xingfeng forcefully suppressed his wildly beating heart and used a lot of effort to turn his gaze to the 2 lightning horns. As for the other materials, he didn't even want to look at them. The 2 lightning horns had also been refined by Ching Chu. One of them was 5 meters long. Ching Chu even explained, this lightning horn, when it was first taken down, was 17 meters long. The bottom was even thicker than a water tank. Haha, I personally refined it. This thing is an extremely good material for lightning attribute weapons. Dima's bad feeling grew stronger and stronger. He said, "Don't listen to the exaggeration. I admit that this is a good material for a thunder-type weapon, but you need to use a lot of materials to make it. This is a bottomless pit." Ching Chu said disdainfully, "This is the main ingredient. Main material. We can gather other things, but not the main ingredient." Lei Xingfeng naturally understood that these 2 thunder horns were definitely good materials for refining weapons. He had been looking for them for a long time, but he just couldn't find the materials to refine his own sword seal. There were a lot of things that needed to be done to refine this kind of main material, and the thunder horns perfectly fit the requirements. Moreover, if he used the thunder horns to refine his sword seal, its power would definitely satisfy him. Dima said, "Hey, little guy, you can't just look at his materials. My stuff is pretty good too. Come take a look." Lei Xingfeng could only walk to the side. The entire courtyard was filled with a small mountain of materials. Dima had also thrown caution to the wind. The materials he took out, other than the thunderous star beast body, there were many other things. Among them, The most eye-catching thing was the thunderous star beast's spine. It was 10 meters long and had obviously been refined before. This spine was blue and black in color. One ring after another, it was very beautiful. Dima liked this spine the most. He said, "When I first got this spine, it was 300 meters long. I used all kinds of supplementary materials to refine it and shrunk it to 10 meters long. This method is better than his." Ching Chu said, "Old Dima, you're not being kind again. How am I worse than you?" Dima waved his hand and said, "In terms of other things, I might not be as good as you. But in terms of refining weapons, can you compare to me?" Ching Chu was speechless. He knew that he wasn't as good as this guy. In the entire Ming-Zhe alliance, this guy was at least in the top 10 in terms of refining weapons. He himself couldn't reach this height. Seeing that Ching Chu didn't say anything, Dima nodded in satisfaction and said, "This is also the main material for refining weapons. Objectively speaking, this main material isn't as good as the Thunderhorn. But after going through my hands and refining, the quality isn't any worse than the Thunderhorn. Other than the spine, the material that Dima took out was a thunder tendon. It was also refined. In a large wooden box, the thunder tendon was coiled into a circle. It was as thick as a child's arm, light blue and translucent. Lei Xingfeng bent down and stretched out his hand. He picked up the coiled thunder tendon and said, "What is this?" Dima said, "Thunder tendon. I refined it. It can be used with the spine to refine weapons. It's a very good thunder-type material. In a sense, it's a top-quality material." Lei Xingfeng nodded and said, "I like it." Ching Chu's expression froze. Before he could say anything, Lei Xingfeng waved his hand and put all the things that Dima took out into his hidden Lun space. Dima stared blankly for a moment before coming to his senses. He laughed loudly and said, "Ha, little brat, you and I exchanged. Ha, good child. I'll owe you a favor in the future. No, 2 favors. Ha. The reason why he was so excited was because with this 10,000-year spirit liquid, he could possibly enter the ranks of high-level monarchs. This was an incredible matter in Ming-Zhe alliance. Qing Yin sighed inwardly. This time, he had offended Lord Ching Chu. Ching Chu's face immediately turned white and then red. This old man was about to turn hostile. Lei Xingfeng walked in front of Ching Chu and swept everything on the ground clean. He said, "Lord Ching, I want your things too." Ching Chu's anger didn't even have time to explode. He was stunned by Lei Xingfeng's actions. He actually took away all his things? He was sure of one thing. If Lei Xingfeng dared to take his things, then he must have a solution. Could it be that he still had another 10,000-year spirit liquid? He immediately calmed down. Dima's laughter immediately stopped. He opened his mouth wide and looked at Lei Xingfeng in shock. If Ching Chu was angry, he could kill him with a slap. What was this brat doing? Lei Xingfeng flipped his wrist and took out another 10,000-year spirit liquid. He handed it to Ching Chu and said, "I still have another." Dima and Ching Chu both opened their mouths wide and let out meaningless gurgling sounds. This was too shocking. A mere restriction master actually had 2 vials of 10,000-year spirit liquid. This was a little frightening. Qing Yin couldn't help but laugh. The 2 old men were fooled by Lei Xingfeng. They argued until their faces turned red and took out all the thunder attribute materials. In the end, Lei Xingfeng casually put away the materials they took out and casually gave them another 10,000-year spirit liquid. It seemed like Lei Xingfeng had more than 2 vials of 10,000-year spirit liquid. Dima and Ching Chu looked at each other and smiled awkwardly. They couldn't help but smile bitterly. They couldn't blame Lei Xingfeng, who asked them to mistakenly think that Lei Xingfeng only had 1 10,000-year spirit liquid. Otherwise, they wouldn't have argued like this. In the end, it all benefited Lei Xingfeng. Ching Chu said, "Lei Xingfeng, right? Very good. I owe you 2 favors." Dima said, "Little brat, you are too cunning. You played the 2 of us like fools." Lei Xingfeng smiled apologetically and said, "Sirs, I wouldn't dare to fool you. I didn't even say anything. How could I fool you?" Dima and Ching Chu weren't angry. They were just a little embarrassed. Lei Xingfeng was able to use 2 vials of 10,000-year spirit liquid to get such a large amount of materials. This was his ability. It was also because the two of them lost their calm and wanted to get the 10,000-year spirit liquid too much that they ended up like this. Qing Chu patted Lei Xingfeng's shoulder and said, I have a few old friends who also have a lot of thunder attribute materials. Do you still have more 10,000-year spirit liquid? Dima's eyes immediately stared at Lei Xingfeng. This thing was too rare. It was something that only existed in legends. He didn't know how this little brat got his hands on it. Lei Xingfeng didn't dare to say that he had it. It was too conspicuous. He smiled bitterly and said, So, I was planning to keep this one for myself. Since Lord Qing wanted it, I could only take it out. I only have 2 vials of 10,000-year spirit liquid. I don't have any left. Dima and Qing Chu nodded. This was reasonable. 2 vials of 10,000-year spirit liquid. One of them was used to exchange for the materials they needed, while the other was kept for themselves. They understood the dispute between the two of them. If they exchanged with one person, they would offend the other. With their status, it was easy for them to make things difficult for Lei Xingfeng. Therefore, the little brat had no choice but to take out the last 10,000-year spirit liquid. It seemed like they were bullying him. Dima said, Yes, little brat. Don't worry. If there is anything you can't solve in the future, just come and find me. Qing Chu also understood that the other party had given him his treasure. No matter what the exchange was, the little brat would suffer a loss. He said, Yes, don't worry. If Olda can't solve it, just come and find me. We will help you solve it together. Lei Xingfeng was overjoyed. Not only did he get the materials he urgently needed, he also got the promise of 2 great experts. This exchange was simply too profitable. Qing Yin couldn't help but sigh. He still wanted to find Lei Xingfeng in private. No matter if it was a trade or some other method, he would have to exchange for a 10,000-year spirit liquid. But now, there was no hope. Lei Xingfeng only had 2 vials, and they were exchanged by 2 great experts. He had no hope at all. As for Hai Yuan Lang, he didn't even have the qualifications to sigh. What could he use to exchange for 10,000-year spirit liquid? Whether it was status, methods, or wealth, these things weren't things that a restriction master like him could hope for. Unless he obtained it by chance, there was no hope at all. Lei Xingfeng's heart was already blooming with joy. Of the materials he had obtained before, almost none of them could be used by him. Only a very small portion of them were lightning-type materials. He had fed them all to Lei Yin, but it was still far from enough. Lei Yin didn't absorb any other materials. Lei Yin didn't reject any lightning-type materials. However, he didn't have many lightning-type materials. They were too difficult to obtain. With the materials he had obtained so far, Lei Xingfeng estimated that he would have enough to advance to Dao Lord Realm. As for what level his cultivation would reach, he had to test it out. Lei Xingfeng was willing to use 2 vials of 10,000-year spirit liquid to exchange for a Thunderstar Beast heart. Not to mention, there were so many top-quality, lightning-type materials. Lei Xingfeng's face was full of smiles. It was hard to conceal his excitement. This trip was definitely worth it. He was very grateful to Qing Yin. Chapter 635. If it wasn't for Qing Yan's attention and willingness to bring Lei Xingfeng over, he wouldn't have been able to obtain so many useful materials. If he had collected them himself, not only would he not be able to defeat the Thunderous Star Beast, he wouldn't have been able to obtain the other materials. Lei Xingfeng thanked him sincerely. Thank you, Lord Qing Yin. Qing Yin said, I really didn't know you had such a treasure. If I had known, I would have made the trade first. Dima and Qing Chu both let out a relieved expression. If Qing Yin had made the trade first, they probably wouldn't have had anything to do with it. Dima said, Qing Yin, I also owe you a favor. Qing Chu also said, Me too. Your restriction, main hall. There are some things I can't say too clearly. It's fine as long as you know. I remember that your restriction main hall's vice hall master should have reached the end of his term. This time, he will be promoted to an elder of the headquarters. I think this is your chance. Qing Yin was overjoyed. In fact, He had been fighting for this position for a long time. Although he had a strong background, the more people who could help him, the better. He hurriedly thanked them. I'll leave everything to you two elders. Dima smiled. I might have to help too. We can't be sure if we will succeed, but we will definitely help. Qing Yin didn't have any regrets. He happily said, Good, good. Xi and Feng pondered. The restriction main hall also had elders, for example. A restriction great master had the treatment of an elder of the restriction main hall. Of course, if one could become an elder, there would be an income, but the elders of the Mingzhe Alliance were different. They were the upper echelons of the Mingzhe Alliance. The restriction main hall had a hall master and a vice hall master. Normally, the hall master wouldn't be in charge. The vice hall master would be the one in charge. The vice hall master had to be at least a restriction grandmaster. However, in the restriction main hall, most of the vice hall masters were restriction grandmasters. Qing Yin hadn't been promoted to a restriction grandmaster yet. If he could become a vice hall master, then his status and treatment would rise greatly. Of course, he would be very interested. If Qing Yin was promoted to a vice hall master, then it would be great news for those restriction grandmasters that he recognized. This world was the same as the previous one. If you had acquaintances or friends, then the good things that you fought for would always come true. There were good and bad missions. Some were easy to complete and had great rewards. Of course, there were difficult missions with little rewards. If you didn't have any friends or acquaintances, then you could imagine how many missions would be given to you. After the transaction was completed, everyone was happy. Only Hai Yuanlang was unhappy. Qing Yin had a harvest. Lei Xingfeng had a great harvest, and Dima and Qing Chu also had a great harvest. Hai Yuanlang was the only one who didn't get anything. He could only watch helplessly. This feeling was too bitter. Following Qing Yin and Lei Xingfeng, Dima and Qing Chu both said that if Lei Xingfeng was free, he could come and play with him often. The two's attitude was very sincere. Their meaning was very clear. If there was an opportunity, they would help him. Lei Xingfeng was naturally happy. He repeatedly agreed, and then left with Qing Yin and Hai Yuanlang. After leaving the residential area, Hai Yuanlang sighed and said, Why can't I get such a precious treasure? Qing Yin said, It depends on luck. If you encounter something good, then it's yours. If you don't, then there's no other way. Hai Yuanlang said, A phone. Where did you get such a heaven-defying treasure? Sigh. If I knew earlier, I would have exchanged with you. Qing Yin said, Don't think about it. It's impossible to exchange successfully. Do you have materials from the thunderous star beast body? Although a Feng's exchange was a bit of a loss, these thunder-type materials are really hard to find. Take the thunderous star beast, for example. If it wasn't for the magnetic star beast, why would they kill it? This thing is extremely difficult to deal with. If it wasn't an accident, it's impossible to kill it. Hai Yuanlang said, I find it strange too. If it's not easy to kill, then just avoid it. Why kill it? Lei Xingfeng said, I know this. Although I haven't seen a real adult thunderous star beast, I know that once you provoke it, it will not rest until you die. It's impossible to escape. It's a fight to the death. Hai Yuanlang said, No wonder. I guess this thunderous star beast was very painful for them to kill. Qing Yin said, Yes, one of the monarch rank experts was heavily injured. However, it was because of his strong restraint that the others had a chance to kill it. Soon, the three of them arrived at Qing Yan's residence. Hai Yuanlang said, I should go back too. Today was an eye-opener for me. Lei Xingfeng said, Master Hai, don't be in a hurry to leave. Hai Yuanlang said, Is there anything else? Lei Xingfeng said, I still have to apologize to the two of you. Qing Yin said, Apologize for what? Hai Yuanlang said, What's there to apologize for? Lei Xingfeng said, Because I lied to Master Dama, I still have 2 bottles of 10,000-year spirit liquid. Qing Yin pointed at Lei Xingfeng, speechless. Hai Yuanlang's eyes widened and said in shock, You still have more? My God, how many bottles of 10,000-year spirit liquid did you get? Lei Xingfeng said, Only 2 bottles left. Really only 2 bottles left. I don't have any more. He had no choice. He wanted to thank the two of them. Even if he had to give them the bottles of 10,000-year spirit liquid, he was willing. Of course, it wasn't good to give it away like this. Qin Yin and Hai Yuanlang instantly understood Xian Feng's intentions. These 2 bottles of 10,000-year spiritual liquid were prepared for them. This surprise came too quickly and too fiercely, causing the 2 of them to be stunned for a while before they could regain their senses. Qin Yin shouted, "Wow, Feng, you're too awesome." Hai Yuanlang suddenly understood and said, "If a Feng said that he still had 10,000 years spirit liquid, then it wouldn't be our turn." At that time, a Feng deliberately said that he didn't have any more. Qin Yin immediately understood. If Lei Xingfeng said that he still had 10,000 years spirit liquid, even if Dama and Qin Chu didn't exchange, they would have their own friends. They were all monarch rank experts. Any one of them could casually take out thunder-type materials. How could Qin Yin and Hai Yuanlang compete? Even if Qin Yin had a chance, Hai Yuanlang had no chance at all. He was only a restriction grandmaster. In terms of wealth, he couldn't even compare to Ai Qi and Bai Xia. Lei Xingfeng nodded and said, "Yes, I also don't dare to say that I have it. Otherwise, Master Qin Yin and Master Hai would have a hard time getting it." Qin Yin said, "A Feng, call me Big Brother Qin Yin in the future. Don't worry, I might not be much in the Mingzhe Alliance, but in the restriction main hall, I still have some say." Hai Yuanlang said, "Yes, a Feng. Don't call me Master Hai in the future. It's embarrassing. Call me Big Brother Hai." Lei Xingfeng smiled and agreed. He was very satisfied to be able to rope in these 2. Taking out 2 vials of 10,000 years spirit liquid, Lei Xingfeng didn't even bargain. He directly handed them to Qin Yin and Hai Yuanlang and said, "Big Brother Qin Yin, Big Brother Hai, here you go." Qin Yin said, "All right, this doesn't count as a deal. In the future, as long as I find thunder-type materials, I will give them to you." Hai Yuanlang also said, "Yes, me too. In the future, as long as there are thunder-type materials or materials related to thunder-type materials, as long as I find them, they will be yours. In 2 days, I will give you a batch of thunder-type materials. I still have some mission rewards that I haven't received yet, so I will exchange them for thunder-type materials." Qin Yin also said, "Yes, in a while, I will need to organize them. I have a lot of materials, but I don't know how many thunder-type materials I have. After I organize them, as long as there are materials related to them, I will give them to you." Lei Xingfeng said with a smile, "That's good. I am indeed lacking in thunder-type materials. At my current cultivation level, the only thing that is stuck at the door is materials. Otherwise, I would have broken through." This was the best way to trade. Both Qin Yin and Hai Yuanlang understood that they didn't have enough materials to exchange for 10,000 years spirit liquid. They could only use this method to slowly repay. Of course, this was a transaction based on conscience. Lei Xingfeng didn't care about this at all. As the saying goes, favors are greater than the heavens. He was very familiar with this after being influenced by his previous life. It was not easy to owe favors, and it was not easy to repay them. Both Qin Yin and Hai Yuanlang didn't realize this problem. Lei Xingfeng also secretly laughed. In the restriction main hall, he had 2 allies. In the future, if he encountered any problems, these 2 would definitely help him. The greatest effect of the 10,000-year spirit liquid was to help cultivators break through bottlenecks. Of course, even if one wanted to break through, they would still have to replenish seals. Advancement materials were indispensable. Normally, one would replenish the seals first before breaking through. However, the effect of the 10,000-year spirit liquid was extremely strong. It was often used to forcibly raise one's cultivation level before replenishing the seals. This was also the reason why people went crazy over it. Even monarch rank experts could break through after using the 10,000-year spirit liquid. This was extremely attractive to monarch rank experts. Qin Yan's cultivation had been stagnant for a long time. It wasn't that he didn't want to break through, but that he had focused all his energy on restrictions. It was very difficult for him to break through. With the 10,000-year spirit liquid, he could forcibly raise his cultivation level and break through to a higher realm. As for the advancement materials, he had already prepared them. Hai Yuanlong's situation was similar. His cultivation level was too low. No matter how high his restriction level was, it would still be a huge problem for his own development. With the 10,000 years spirit liquid, it was equivalent to cheating once. They could forcibly advance their cultivation level by 1 or 2 steps. To them, this was extremely significant. One must know that cultivation level and age were related. The higher one's cultivation level, the longer one could live. Furthermore, the 10,000-year spirit liquid had the effect of prolonging one's lifespan. Even if one's vitality was exhausted, the 10,000-year spirit liquid could still forcibly raise it. Lei Xingfeng then bid farewell and left. He had obtained a large amount of lightning attribute materials and was eager to go back and check it out. Qing Yin and Hai Yuanlang sent Lei Xingfeng all the way to the intersection. Under Lei Xingfeng's insistence, the two of them didn't continue to send him off. In just a moment, Lei Xingfeng returned to his home. After returning to his room, Lei Xingfeng began to take inventory of what he had obtained today. Chapter 636. The first thing that Lei Xingfeng took out was the thunderous star beast's heart. This thing had been refined by Qing Chu and was already quite exquisite. If Lei Xingfeng refined it himself, he would not be able to reach this standard. Qing Chu was a mid-level monarch rank expert, and his methods were much better than Lei Xingfeng's by a lot. Lei Xingfeng's Lei Yin was beating crazily. Due to Lei Xingfeng's suppression, it could not come out for the time being. However, he could clearly feel the excitement. Playing with the refined, thunderous star beast's heart, Lei Xingfeng could not help but sigh in admiration. This method was truly amazing. Gradually, Lei Xingfeng realized that he could not suppress the beating Lei Yin. After thinking for a while, Lei Xingfeng finally released Lei Yin. In an instant, Lei Yin rose from the top of his head and shot out traces of lightning. It immediately connected with the thunderous star beast's heart. Before Lei Xingfeng could react, he saw the gem-like heart start to beat. Dong, 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 dong. Lei Xingfeng was dumbfounded as he saw the heart start to beat. He was shocked. What the F***CK? It can actually beat? It's alive? He was confused. Before he could understand, the heart that was beating again was sucked in by Lei Yin and disappeared in an instant. Lei Yin's entire body started to expand and contract. Just like the beating of the heart, it started to make thumping sounds. Lei Xingfeng and Lei Yin were one. Therefore, when Lei Yin sucked in the heart, he could clearly feel the two fusing quickly. With the beating, he could feel Lei Yin's power and vitality crazily rising. This feeling was very mysterious. He could not describe it, but he could clearly feel it. It was a kind of power. Lei Yin also had an urge to return to his body. Lei Xingfeng immediately recalled Lei Yin. When Lei Yin returned to his body, Lei Xingfeng felt as if he was struck by lightning. His entire body shook, and he could not help but release his true body. With a loud bang, the entire residence was destroyed by the true body. Kutcher, Dalai Ba, Dabobo, and Bo Yi flew out. The four of them also brought the other servants away to prevent them from being injured by Lei Xingfeng's true body. Kutcher and the other three looked at Lei Xingfeng's huge body in shock. Dalai Ba said, This is very powerful. Dabobo's eyes flickered. He said, Strange. When did a heaven monarch have such a powerful, true body? Dalai Ba shook his head and said, It feels even stronger than me. Due to the huge size of the true body, Lei Xingfeng's true body was more than 10 meters tall, even though he was sitting down. Furthermore, his true body was still growing. The speed had already slowed down, but it was still growing bit by bit. It was condensing and turning from a shadow into a real body. His body was surrounded by flickering lightning arcs. This alarmed all the restriction masters living in the vicinity. He was still trying his best to adjust himself. No matter how weak the power was, he would not give up. He had a thought in his mind that he could not let Lei Yin do as it wished. He had to exert his own power to affect Lei Yin's changes. After persevering, Lei Xingfeng finally reaped some benefits. He gradually began to control Lei Yin. This way, the combination of Lei Yin and the Thunderstar Beast's heart allowed him to control it. For Lei Xingfeng, this was very important. Being able to control and not being able to control were two different concepts. Kutcher saw that Lei Xingfeng's true body was becoming more and more solid and was gradually shrinking. He let out a breath and said, "It seems like it's under control. That's scary." The other three also nodded. Dalieba said, "Once it goes out of control, the surrounding area will be finished." The so-called out of control meant that the true body could not contain the power brought by the heart. When the true body finally collapsed, it would cause a huge explosion. The surrounding residences would probably be wiped out. The four Dao Monarch Patriarch guards all let out a breath of relief. If Lei Xingfeng died, they would be finished as well. In the Ming-Zhe alliance, if a restriction master died, the guards would not be killed. However, they would be abandoned by the Ming-Zhe alliance and transferred to a specialized combat team. No cultivator would be willing to join such a team that fought to the death. Lei Xingfeng withdrew his true body bit by bit. At this moment, Lei Yin began to give feedback and modify his body so that he could better adapt to the lightning. A huge amount of life force flowed in, which could increase his lifespan. Lei Xingfeng was very clear about this. As his strength increased, his cultivation level naturally increased as well. He was originally a primary stage Heaven Monarch, but with Lei Yin's help, his cultivation level began to increase rapidly. He instantly broke through the middle stage Heaven Monarch realm and still did not stop. The rapid increase in strength shocked Lei Xingfeng. Sometimes, it was not a good thing to increase one's cultivation level too quickly. The middle stage Heaven Monarch realm did not last long. Lei Xingfeng broke through to the high stage Heaven Monarch realm and finally stopped at the peak stage Heaven Monarch realm. It was not that he could not break through to the primary stage Dao Monarch realm, but to advance to the Dao Monarch realm required a huge amount of materials. Even though Lei Xingfeng had advanced to the Dao Monarch realm now, he still had to do his homework. He did not think that he had enough materials to advance to the Dao Monarch realm. However, the bottleneck to the Dao Monarch realm had disappeared. As long as he gathered enough materials, it would not be difficult for Lei Xingfeng to advance to the Dao Monarch realm. Although he had obtained a large amount of materials from the Thunderstar Beast, the materials from the Thunderstar Beast were not enough to advance to the Dao Monarch realm. A large amount of supplementary materials were also needed. One had to know that Wu Yang had spent a long time preparing to advance to the Dao Monarch realm. Even with the materials Xi and Feng had collected, he still didn't have enough lightning attribute materials. The threshold of becoming a Dao Monarch Old Ancestor wasn't that easy to cross. Kutcher and the others were dumbfounded. Lei Xingfeng had advanced from the primary stage Heaven Monarch realm to the peak stage Heaven Monarch realm. The four of them felt like they were dreaming. It was too fast. In just a few hours, Lei Xingfeng's cultivation had skyrocketed. It was very troublesome to adjust, so Lei Xingfeng did not plan to continue cultivating here. Of course, he could not stop now. Lei Yin and the Thunderstar Beast's heart had not completely fused. Lei Xingfeng was filled with regret. He should not have been in such a hurry to swallow the heart. He did not think that it would cause such a huge commotion and cause the residents to be completely destroyed by the Thunderstar Beast's true body. This Thunderstar Beast's heart was of great help to Lei Xingfeng. With this rare heart, Lei Yin was even stronger than the Dao Monarch Realm Patriarch seal. Coupled with Lei Xingfeng's special true body, his strength had reached a very high level. It was just that he had not fought, so no one knew how strong he was. After another 4 days of fusion, Lei Yin had barely fused with the heart. Of course, he still had to go through a long period of cultivation before he could truly fuse with the heart. At present, he could only stop cultivating. Due to the lack of lightning, Lei Xingfeng knew that it was far from enough after he finished cultivating. However, he could not rush it. This was a grinding process. Lei Xingfeng stood up and walked to the courtyard. He turned back to look at the residence that had turned into ruins. He could not help but let out a bitter smile and said, "Kutcher, go find someone to rebuild the residence. I have something to do outside. You don't have to follow me." I will be at the Ming-Zhe Alliance's headquarters. Kutcher agreed. As long as he was moving around the Ming-Zhe Alliance's headquarters, it did not matter if there were people following him. It was still very safe here. Chapter 637. Lei Xingfeng walked out of the courtyard and headed outside. Walking into a forest, Lei Xingfeng looked back and didn't see anyone. He smiled and returned to the mirror world. Appearing in his own courtyard, Lei Xingfeng saw Thunderstorm and Lei Xingyao sitting there, Mad Eagle, Tiger Love, Jean Daya, and the others. Lei Xingfeng smiled. "Ye little sister, you're all here." Lei Xingfeng walked into the wooden hut and sat down. Thunderstorm asked, "How is it?" You advanced?" Lei Xingfeng said, "I was lucky. There was almost a problem." Thunderstorm also advanced, but he was a middle-stage Heaven Monarch. He asked with concern, "What happened?" Lei Xingfeng smiled. "It was very dangerous, but I managed to get through it and got a Thunderstar Beast's heart. When Lei Yin was eating it, there was a problem." Thunderstorm obviously knew what a Thunderstar Beast's heart meant. He said in shock, "A Thunderstar Beast's heart? Oh my God! Where did you get such an overpowered thing? That thing, if it is refined well, it will benefit your Lei Yin for a lifetime. With it as the foundation, you can create the best seal. This is unbelievable. The Ming-Zhe Alliance is really amazing." Lei Xingfeng said, "I didn't get it from a Ming-Zhe Alliance. I got it from a Monarch-level expert. That was a middle-stage Monarch-level expert." Mad Eagle said, "A phone. What did you use to exchange for it?" Lei Xingfeng said, "At first, I didn't have any hope of getting it. I searched the entire Hidden Luin space and couldn't find anything suitable. Then, I thought of a treasure and finally made a deal." Jean Daya asked curiously, "What treasure?" Lei Xingfeng smiled. 10,000-year spirit liquid." Lin Ling popped out from Lei Xingyao's shoulder and said, "That's mine, Ying Ying." Lei Xingyao reached out a finger and rubbed her little head. She smiled. "I know it's yours. This is your contribution. Our Lin Ling is the best." Being praised by Lei Xingyao, Lin Ling immediately puffed up her chest and cried proudly. Then, she reacted and called out, "Yeah, sister, you messed up my hair, Ying Ying. It's very troublesome to comb your hair. Do you know that?" Lei Xingyao smiled. Okay, your hair looks good without combing it." Thunderstorm then said, "This is a good thing." Jean Daya was very clear about the effects of the 10,000-year spirit liquid. This thing had an unbelievable effect. It forcefully pulled him back from the brink of death and even allowed him to advance to Monarch. He said, "It's actually using the 10,000-year spirit liquid to trade. No wonder." Lei Xingfeng smiled. "Not only did I get a heart, but I also got some other materials. But before I could organize them, Lei Yin swallowed the heart, and I almost died." Thunderstorm shook his head. "You took too much of a risk. Are you planning to go to the Magnetic Storm Mountains this time?" Lei Xingfeng nodded. "I must go. Luckily, I have the mirror world. If I couldn't go back, I don't know how long it would take for me to completely fuse with it." Thunderstorm said, "And Meicheng, then don't delay. Let's go first. When you come back, we'll talk again." Everyone also urged Lei Xingfeng to go to the Magnetic Storm Mountains. They all knew that Lei Xingfeng needed to stabilize his cultivation. Lei Xingfeng said, "I can still hold on for a few more days. I need the help of the secret sect. I lack a lot of supplementary materials." Thunderstorm said, "Make a list and send someone to find Wu Yang and your master. Let's see if we can get them." The entire secret sect started to move. Lei Xingfeng made a list of materials. Wu Yang and Gucci took the lead and started to crazily collect materials. If Lei Xingfeng's strength increased, the entire secret sect would increase as well. As Lei Xingfeng entered the Ming-Zhe Alliance and gained a foothold, the secret sect's dependence on him gradually increased. All kinds of materials were sent to Lei Xingfeng's courtyard. Lei Xingfeng checked them one by one. This time, he wanted to completely stabilize his cultivation as a peak stage Heaven Monarch. As for advancing to the Tao Monarch realm, he didn't have any plans for now. He lacked too many materials. Because Lei Xingfeng obtained the materials from the Thunderstar Beast, what he really lacked were the supplementary materials. He was also lacking the main materials. He needed to continue collecting them. This process of collecting materials was something that every cultivator had to go through. It was truly a painful thing. Everyone in the secret sect was mobilized. Those who had materials would take them out. Those who didn't had to actively search for them. Soon, Lei Xingfeng gathered all the supplementary materials. After all, he wasn't going to advance to the Tao Monarch realm. He was just a peak stage Heaven Monarch. All he needed to do was to strengthen himself. With all these materials collected, it meant that Lei Xingfeng could smoothly stabilize his cultivation. After busying himself for 2 days, Lei Xingfeng left the Mirror Realm and arrived at the Magnetic Storm Mountain Range. After entering the Magnetic Storm Mountain Range, Lei Xingfeng felt like he had returned home. Even the air felt abnormally fresh. He came to the platform on the cliff behind the mountain. Before he sat down, Lei Yin began to beat in his body. The deafening thunder exploded in his ears. Lei Xingfeng felt like he was listening to the most beautiful music. This feeling was simply too good. Without any hesitation, Lei Yin flew out amidst the violent thunder. In an instant, countless lightning bolts struck Lei Yin. At that moment, Lei Xingfeng seemed to feel Lei Yin's cheers. Lei Xingfeng muttered to himself, "Is this the rhythm of becoming a spirit? Why do I keep feeling that Lei Yin is emotional? Strange." With the help of the lightning, Lei Xingfeng was finally able to completely control Lei Yin. The effect of the heart gradually weakened. Right now, it was Lei Yin devouring the heart, not the other way around. If a thunderous star bee's heart was just taken out, it would be several meters in diameter. It was a huge object. However, after being refined by Lord Qingchu, it had shrunk to the size of soccer ball. In addition to retaining all the useful parts of the heart, many other materials had been added. If Lei Yin were to eat a fresh heart, its effect would be much worse. Lei Xingfeng sat on the platform while Lei Yin floated in the air, receiving a baptism of lightning. Lei Yin's entire body exploded with dazzling light. Suddenly, a thunder attribute material appeared in his hand. As soon as it appeared, it was sucked away by Lei Yin. One by one, the materials were taken out by Lei Yin and turned into useful materials for Lei Yin. His cultivation was still rising rapidly, but Lei Xingfeng was forcefully suppressing it at the peak stage of the Heaven Monarch realm. He was trying his best to control himself from advancing. This consumed a lot of Lei Xingfeng's energy. This was the first time he realized how difficult it was to prevent himself from advancing. A large amount of materials were taken out and devoured by Lei Yin bit by bit. Lei Xingfeng's cultivation was completely stabilized. Around 2 days later, Lei Xingfeng released his true body again. His true body needed to be cleansed and replenished by lightning. As a huge amount of lightning energy flowed into his true body, Lei Xingfeng felt that he was getting stronger and more powerful. If he was at the peak stage of the Heaven Monarch realm in his hometown, a peak stage Heaven Monarch realm would be enough to support a small to medium-sized secret sect. However, after joining the Mingzhe Alliance and seeing so many experts, Lei Xingfeng no longer felt excited. Even if he advanced to become a Tao Monarch realm patriarch, he wouldn't feel that happy. In the Mingzhe Alliance, monarchs were the true upper echelons. After obtaining this heart, Lei Xingfeng knew that before reaching the peak stage of the Tao Monarch realm, he wouldn't have to worry about Lei Yin's and his cultivation. As long as he could find enough materials, he would be able to advance to the peak stage of the Tao Monarch realm. There wouldn't be any problems. This was the benefit of the thunderous star beast's heart. Of course, the biggest credit was given to Qingchu. This was because a Monarch realm expert had personally refined this heart and brought great benefits to Lei Xingfeng. After thinking about it carefully, Lei Xingfeng understood that his Lei Yin had completely changed. It wasn't the Lei Yin that he understood in the past. His Lei Yin had undergone an earth-shattering change. Lei Yin had a completely different form. Even Lei Xingfeng was dumbfounded when he saw it. It was a shrunken version of the thunderous star beast. What was worse was that the head was his and the body was the thunderous star beast's. Therefore, Lei Xingfeng's true body had changed as well. He had turned into a huge thunderous star beast. It turned out that after possessing the thunderous star beast's heart, he would also have the appearance of the thunderous star beast. Fortunately, his Lei was still very powerful in the end and controlled the entire heart. Therefore, the head was Lei Xingfeng's. With such a strange, true body, Lei Xingfeng felt extremely awkward. It was too King ugly. Lei Xingfeng smiled bitterly as he looked at the gradually changing true body. He kept cursing in his heart. However, he had no way to change it. It was impossible for the heart to escape from Lei. Once this thing fused, it was an irreversible process. Especially after the lightning baptism, the fusion was complete. In other words, Lei Xingfeng's true body would have the appearance of an adult thunderous star beast from now on. I don't have the face to see anyone. Lei Xingfeng howled. His original true body was a larger version of Lei Xingfeng. Now his true body was a thunderous star beast. Other than one thing, the two were completely different. Both of them were lightning attributed. The thunderous star beast was a lightning attributed star beast, while Lei Xingfeng was a lightning attributed cultivator. Thunderous star beast. Lei Xingfeng. He suddenly realized that his name and the thunderous star beast only differed by one word. Could it be that we were born brothers? Lei Xingfeng was completely at a loss. I was a human in my previous life, not a thunderous star beast. How could I have such a true body? How am I going to see anyone? Incomparably at a loss, incomparably irritated, Lei Xingfeng stared at his true body for a long time before letting out a long sigh. He decided that unless it was absolutely necessary, he would definitely not reveal his true body. It was too ugly, too unsightly. Due to the mutation of his true body, his original true body was at most 20 to 30 meters tall. However, after transforming into the appearance of a thunderous star beast, his true body grew exponentially. One must know that the thunderous star beast had a huge tail and two extremely long lightning horns. With all of these added together, it was normal for his true body to reach 200 to 300 meters tall. Of course, the amount of lightning absorbed by his true body was terrifying. Chapter 638. Lei Xingfeng stayed on the platform for more than 10 days in order to condense his true body for the first time. The Thunderstar Beast's true body, which made Lei Xingfeng extremely resentful, needed to absorb too much lightning. 10 days was barely enough. After 3 more days, Lei Xingfeng finally condensed his true body. Although Lei Xingfeng didn't like the appearance of his true body, he was very satisfied with the power and huge potential it contained. Originally, Lei Xingfeng wanted to refine the Thunderhorn. The Scarlet Afterglow Sword Seal wasn't good enough for Lei Xingfeng. It wasn't powerful, its attribute wasn't good, and its quality wasn't good. However, he didn't have a replacement, so he had to make do with it. After obtaining the Thunderhorn of the Thunderstar Beast, Lei Xingfeng planned to refine his own Thundersword Seal. Moreover, this Thundersword Seal could be combined with Lei. In other words, when his true body appeared, the sword seal refined by the Thunderhorn could appear in the hands of his true body. This method could greatly increase his strength. However, Lei Xingfeng had stayed in the Magnetic Storm Mountain range for too long. At first, he thought that he would only need a few days to consolidate his cultivation. He didn't expect that his true body would mutate, so he spent too much time. Retrieving his true body, Lei Xingfeng turned around and left the platform, returning to the Mirror Realm. After exchanging a few words with Wu Yang, Thunderstorm, and Guqi, Lei Xingfeng left behind a batch of materials that he didn't need. After emptying more than half of his hidden lune space, Lei Xingfeng hurried back to the Mingzhe Alliance's headquarters. This time, he had left for a long time. When he returned home, he found that the house that was destroyed by his true body had been rebuilt. A more beautiful building appeared in front of him. This was the standard of a restriction master's residence. It was even more beautiful, and the interior was decorated with many precious materials. However, Lei Xingfeng didn't care too much. He found Kutch and asked, "Did anything happen when I left?" Kutch and the others weren't in a hurry. Dolly Boss said, "No, no one came looking for me these past few days. However, Mr. Greenrock and Mr. Hai Yuan Lang sent me some materials. I received them temporarily and waited for you to come back." Daily Aba said as he took out hundreds of boxes of materials from his hidden lens space. Lei Xingfeng said happily, "Good, good." He was very happy. Originally, he gave the 10,000-year spirit liquid to express his gratitude and also to find his own connections. He didn't expect that he would get anything good. Since no one came looking for him, Lei Xingfeng let out a breath of relief. He was afraid that if someone came looking for him but couldn't find him, it would be hard for him to avoid suspicion. Once there was a large-scale search, it would be very disadvantageous for him. Lei Xingfeng smiled and said, "Good, I'll take it." He put the boxes into his hidden Luin space and returned to his room. He first took out a box. After opening it, Lei Xingfeng was quite surprised. This was a very precious material that he needed. He then took out another box and patiently examined it. It was full of good materials. There were many materials that he didn't have. He was very satisfied with this. This batch of materials replenished Lei Xingfeng's storage. Lei Xingfeng patiently sorted them. He also took out another set and prepared to give it to Thunderstorm. He was also a lightning cultivator. It was also difficult for him to find materials. After everything was done, it was already the next morning. Lei Xingfeng walked out of his room and said, "Kutcher, let's go to the database." After he was promoted to Restriction Master, he hadn't been to the database yet. The database of the Restriction Master Hall had a large amount of study materials. At the Restriction Master level, most of the materials could be read and studied. Lei Xingfeng brought Kutcher and the others to the database. The guards at the door saw Lei Xingfeng and immediately respectfully saluted. With the Restriction Master uniform, it was obvious that Lei Xingfeng was a master. Lei Xingfeng asked, "Is Agua here?" A guard said, "Agua is here. He just went in. I'll go call him." Soon Agua ran out. When he saw Lei Xingfeng, he couldn't help but be surprised. He said, "Sir, congratulations." The guards on the side looked at Agua in confusion. Agua said, "Last time Sir came, you were still a high restriction master. This time, Sir is already a restriction master." Ha! The guards suddenly realized that this was very rare. It turned out that Agua had been promoted. That was why Agua congratulated him. Agua brought Lei Xingfeng in. He said, "Sir, this time you can enter a higher level database." "Sir, where do you want to go?" Lei Xingfeng said, "Let's go to the higher level database." Agua nodded and brought Lei Xingfeng into the higher level database. He said, "I can't go in. Sir, please come in. If you need anything, you can call me." Lei Xingfeng nodded and walked into the database. There was no one inside. He found that there were very few restriction masters in the restriction main hall who were studying seriously. It was probably because the life of a restriction master was more comfortable and they didn't have much motivation to study. Moreover, most of the high-level restriction masters had all kinds of tasks, so they didn't have much time to study. This database was very big. This was Lei Xingfeng's first time here. There were all kinds of ancient books and records. After checking a little, Lei Xingfeng found that the information here wasn't sorted at all. Although it was neatly arranged, the information was very messy. However, Lei Xingfeng didn't care. He picked up a page of the Star Python record and read it carefully. This page recorded the method of making restriction components. Lei Xingfeng immediately immersed himself in it. Any information was very important to him. Once Lei Xingfeng started studying, he would study day and night. Because a cultivator's body was very strong, their memory was also very good. They only needed to read a record once to remember it. When he was hungry, he would eat some dry food. When he was thirsty, he would drink some water. Lei Xingfeng had a large amount of food and water in his hidden Lun space, so he didn't need to worry about food and water. If he was tired, he would find a corner to sleep. Lei Xingfeng's hard work made Agua extremely impressed. He had never seen such a hard-working restriction master. A month passed, Lei Xingfeng didn't go back. 2 months passed, Lei Xingfeng was still the same. On the 3rd month, Lei Xingfeng was still hugging a page of the Star Python record to study. On this day, Lei Xingfeng finished reading a page of the Star Python record. His gaze was attracted by a steel book. The so-called steel book wasn't completely made of steel. It was a type of metal that was similar to steel. It was made into thin pieces, and a dozen pieces were bound together to form a book. Any book that was made of this type of book was very ancient. At that time, the usage of the star python record wasn't very common. Lei Xingfeng reached out and took it, flipping it open to read. This was a description of seals and some understanding of seals. Lei Xingfeng felt like he had obtained a treasure. He didn't think that other than restriction knowledge, there would be knowledge related to seals. This kind of thing was too rare. The words were very ancient and the writing was very small. The entire page was densely packed with words. Lei Xingfeng hugged the book and walked to a corner and sat down. This was the place where he studied. He even placed a piece of bee skin on the ground and leaned against the corner to study carefully. Lei Xingfeng always had doubts about his own Lei Yin. Especially after this mutation, his true body changed greatly. He had asked Wu Yang and the others about this, but he didn't have an answer. This book mentioned this question. The so-called compound seal was born from the heart. Once the seal swallowed a strong heart, it would form a compound seal. Of course, the first time, the heart had to be of the same nature. Once it succeeded, the seal's power would increase greatly. After reading this record, Lei Xingfeng felt that the compound seal was very dangerous. It was especially dangerous when fusing. If the fusion wasn't done well, the seal would collapse. If that was the case, then he was really lucky. Lei Xingfeng wiped away his sweat. Fortunately, the thunderous star beast's heart had been refined by Qing Chu. Otherwise, it would really be dangerous. Actually, during the fusion, Lei Xingfeng also felt that something was wrong. This was because the thunderous star beast's heart had almost swallowed his Lei Yin. In the end, at the magnetic storm mountain range, he had to rely on countless lightning to forcefully drive Lei Yin to swallow this rare, thunderous star beast's heart. If he didn't have such a large amount of lightning, it would be very difficult for him to drive Lei Yin. If he forcefully drove it, he would need a large amount of energy, such as large ring crystals or other energy crystals. Once the thunderous star beast's heart swallowed Lei Yin, Lei Xingfeng would gradually turn into a beast. This kind of change was absolutely unbearable for Lei Xingfeng. Turning into a thunderous star beast? Then he might as well die. At the end of the record, once the compound seal was activated and it was successful, it would increase its strength in the future. It would be able to swallow the hearts of various powerful existences and obtain some special skills. This made Lei Xingfeng happy again. After studying for 3 months, Lei Xingfeng was finally a little tired. He put down the record in his hand and walked out of the information room. Agua came up and said, "Sir." Lei Xingfeng nodded and said, "This time, we will stop here. Next time, you'll be in charge." He took out a large ring crystal and gave it to Agua. "Thank you for your hard work." Agua received it in shock. Logically speaking, a restriction master didn't need to give him anything. He hesitated and said, "This," Lei Xingfeng said, "No need to thank me. Thank you for your hard work these past few days." Agua was still considered smart. He immediately thanked, "Thank you, sir." Large ring crystals were hard currency in the Ming-Zhe alliance. Everyone liked it, especially low-level cultivators like Agua. They needed it even more. At the entrance of the information room, Ku Chi was still waiting. The other 3 weren't there. Lei Xingfeng asked, "Dalai Ba and the others aren't here?" Chapter 639. Kutcher said, "Yes, we will take turns waiting for you here. The rest will stay at home." Lei Xingfeng smiled. "Okay, let's go back." As they lived close to each other, the 2 of them strolled back. On the way, Xi and Feng could hear pi pi pa 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 sound coming from the houses they passed by. He asked curiously, "What sound is so familiar?" At that moment, he only felt that the sound was very familiar, but he couldn't remember what it was. Kutcher said, "Mahjong." Lei Xingfeng immediately reacted. It was the sound of Mahjong. In his previous life, this sound was very familiar. He said, "Why is there the sound of Mahjong?" Kutcher said, "Isn't it because of your invention? The whole Ming-Zhe alliance has become popular. There are too many people playing it." Xi and Feng was tongue-tied as he spoke. Are you serious?" Kutcher said, "Even the higher-ups of Ming-Zhe alliance are all the rage. In the past, when they gathered together, they mostly gambled. Now, They use mahjong to gamble. As long as you learn it, you will be fascinated. Lei Xingfeng couldn't help but smile bitterly. Mahjong was the national treasure in his previous life. He didn't expect that once it spread, it would be so destructive. It could be seen that there was a lack of entertainment here. There was no need to buy or sell mahjong. Every cultivator knew how to make a set. As long as it looked good, everyone would probably make a set. Kutcher said, "The four of us often play mahjong. It is really fun. It is a good way to kill time." Lei Xingfeng said, "Okay, one of them is good. All right, other than mahjong, there's also poker, right? How about poker?" Kutcher said, "Some people like poker, but most people like mahjong. This game can be used to fight. It suits most people's tastes." On the way back, there was really the sound of mahjong. Lei Xingfeng was speechless. When he reached home, he saw Ai Chi, Bai Xia, and Baspa sitting in the yard. Lei Xingfeng saw the three and asked curiously, "Hey, you three, why are you here?" Bai Xia said, "Brother Lei, we're not welcome here." Lei Xingfeng laughed and said, "Haha, how could I not welcome you? I'm just curious. Why did the three of you come together?" Bath said domineeringly, "We can fight and quarrel, but we are still friends. Why can't we come together?" Lei Xingfeng smiled and said, "Okay, it's my fault." Everyone laughed. Ai Chi said, "Brother Lei, we've been looking for you a few times, but we haven't seen you. However, we thought that it was about time for you to come out. I understand now. What's so fun about the database? You've been there for 3 months. You're really patient." The three of them didn't like to study. What they liked the most was to play and explore. Looking for excitement was the norm in their lives. Lei Xingfeng asked, "What's the matter?" Bai Xia asked, "Brother Lei, do you know about the Weiqiang mainland?" Ai Chi rolled his eyes and said, "Last time, I was unlucky at the Weiqiang continent. At that time, Brother Lei was with me. Do you think he knows or not?" Bai Xia said, "Let me finish. Don't interrupt." Ai Chi touched his nose. He knew that this guy was rich and overbearing. Even he couldn't compare with him. Well, rich people always talked loudly. He was called by the two of them. For some reason, he brought them to Lei Xingfeng's house. Lei Xingfeng smiled and said, "I'm very familiar with the Weiqiang mainland. I've been there since the beginning. Later on, I entered the restriction main hall." Bath said, "You participated in that battle? Impressive. You actually came out alive. At least 70% of the first batch of cultivators who entered were killed. Impressive, impressive." Bai Xia was also a little dizzy. He said, "Continent wars have always been a war of attrition. I didn't expect Brother Lei." "Well, Brother Lei didn't go there as a restriction master." Lei Xingfeng smiled and said, "The first batch of cannon fodder." Bath Boss said in shock, "You are cannon fodder. Your cultivation is Heaven Monarch. Peak stage Heaven Monarch. Even down monarchs have a hard time surviving. You, a Heaven Monarch, actually came back alive." Bai Xia might know some things, but he didn't have a deep understanding of the cruel battles in the Weiqiang mainland. He said, "Be careful. You can still survive." Bath Boss said, "Nonsense. I went there too. I went to the supervision team for a while. Later on, I sneaked back. Countless people died." Bai Xia said, "You lunatic. You actually went to the Weiqiang mainland to fight?" Bath Boss said, "Of course. After cultivation, you have to fight to improve. I'm someone who likes to fight. I don't want some people to hide in the headquarters. Once a battle happens, they will be terrified." Bai Xia said, "Old man, who are you talking about?" Ai Chi said, Okay. Why are you quarreling every time you talk? Big mouth, continue." Bath Boss smiled and didn't say anything. Bai Xia pursed his lips and slightly covered his buck teeth. He said, "I got a chance. I want to ask if everyone wants to go." Bath Boss said, "Say it clearly. Don't wait for half the time. Isn't it tiring?" Bai Xia was so angry that he kicked him. Bath Boss smiled and said, "Forget it. If you want to fight, I'll let you have 8. Lei Xingfeng was amused by him. He said, "Old man, you are a Dao monarch. You can't bully people like this." Bath Ba was a little embarrassed and said, "Teasing Big Mouth is one of my joys." Ha 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 ha. Bai Xia was so angry that he ground his teeth. Alas, there was no way he could beat the old man in a fight. The old man was a battle-crazed maniac, and even the youngest of them had reached the Downlord level. Although he was only an initial-level Downlord, compared to him, Baishia and the others could all go die. The difference in power was simply too great. However, both Ai Chi and Baishia didn't care much about cultivation. It was fine as long as the difference wasn't too big. For example, reaching the early stage Heaven Monarch at this age was already very good. This was all thanks to their elders. As long as their cultivation reached a certain level, it wouldn't be a problem for them to advance. The materials had already been prepared. Many cultivators, even if they cultivated very hard and reached the edge of advancement, were hindered by the materials. If they couldn't gather the materials, how could they advance? Baishia said, "In the Thailand continent, we have occupied a huge mineral vein. It's a rare natural crystal mine, a ring crystal mine. It's not artificially refined large ring crystals. It's a ring crystal, a natural ring crystal." Ai Chi said, "So what? Isn't it still occupied by the people in your headquarters warehouse? You don't allow us to mine it." Lei Xingfeng's ears instantly perked up. He knew about natural ring crystals. There's a lot of energy in this world, and half of it existed in the form of crystals. Most of them needed to be purified and refined into artificial crystals, such as large ring crystals. However, there are also a few crystals that could be used naturally. Naturally, they were very rare and precious. Natural ring crystals could replenish the energy of seals and also be used for restrictions. However, it was a bit of loss to use them as driving energy for restrictions. The purest ring crystals were much more precious than high-grade large ring crystals. One natural ring crystal could be exchanged for 100 high-grade large ring crystals. No one would reject such a treasure. Baishia grinned and said, "If I didn't have the chance, would I come to you?" Ai Chi and Bathba instantly widened their eyes. Bathba said, "Bring us to the mining area to mine." Baishia said, "Sightseeing, you know." Ai Chi could not help but laugh. He said, "Good idea, sightseeing. Haha, it shouldn't be a problem to secretly get some ring crystals. Even if he wanted it, he could exchange it for many things. Moreover, it was the best thing to use for bribery. It was small in size and high in value. Ordinary people would not be able to resist if he grabbed a handful to bribe people." Lei Xingfeng was even more excited. As long as he found the place and left the coordinates, he was confident that he could steal most of the ring crystals. He would definitely not let go of such a good opportunity. Soon, everyone came to a realization. Bathba said, "Big Mouth, you are so kind. You must have a motive, right?" Lei Xingfeng was also thinking in his heart. He knew that there must be a reason behind it. Baishia looked at Lei Xingfeng and said, "I need Brother Lei's help. Old AI will be your assistant." Lei Xingfeng said, "Setting up restrictions? Why not find someone from the Restriction Central Hall?" Baishia smiled and said, "Brother Lei, aren't you from the Restriction Central Hall? Moreover, this matter cannot be applied to the Restriction Central Hall. I need to set up a personal restriction." Lei Xingfeng immediately thought of a word. Plunder. This guy was definitely planning to plunder. This should be considered plundering. Seeing Ai Chi and Bathba's expressions, Lei Xingfeng immediately understood. This kind of thing was common. They were not surprised at all. Bathba said, "You want me to find Granduncle for help?" Baishia clapped and said, "Smart. You need the old man to turn a blind eye. Otherwise, we can't do it." Bathba said, "My family's price is high." Baishia laughed and said, "Haha, it is not scary to ask for a high price. What is scary is not asking for a high price." Everyone laughed. This was the current situation of the Ming-Zhe alliance. From this point, the upper echelons of the Ming-Zhe alliance were starting to become corrupt. Lei Xingfeng felt that this was normal. For such a big alliance, with so many upper echelons, it was not possible for them to be incorruptible. Any organization that reached a certain height and had a huge amount of wealth would usually have problems internally. This was Lei Xingfeng's chance. He smiled and said, "What materials do you need to prepare? What restrictions do you need to set up?" If he was a cultivator loyal to the Ming-Zhe alliance, he might have some scruples. However, he was like a spy. He infiltrated the Ming-Zhe alliance, not to strengthen the Ming-Zhe alliance, but to suck blood from the Ming-Zhe alliance. Bai Xie was overjoyed. He was afraid that Lei Xingfeng was a gentleman. That would be troublesome. Seeing Lei Xingfeng asked so straightforwardly, he smiled and said, "It is a very simple restriction array, a psychedelic array." The psychedelic array was a very simple restriction. Lei Xingfeng felt strange and said, "Such a simple restriction array. Old AI can do it. There's no problem at all. Why do you need me?" Chapter 640. Bai Xie said, "It's not that simple. I need an illusory restriction design that makes it impossible for others to detect the existence of the restriction." Lei Xingfeng was stunned. He immediately understood and asked, "Do you have a topographic map?" Bai Xie said, "Yes, I have a topographic map." He took out a page of the Star Python records and passed it to Lei Xingfeng. Lei Xingfeng studied it carefully. First, he rejected the idea that this was the mining area that they had previously robbed. This was a new mining area that could be identified from the map. Secondly, he realized that this was a comprehensive mining area. There were a few large mineral veins, and the ring crystal vein was just an associated, or it wasn't big and was located at the periphery of the mining area. Bai Xie pointed at the map and said, "Use a restriction to cut off this mineral vein. Once someone enters, I need them to leave from another place and not come here." Lei Xingfeng said, "This mine isn't big." Bai Xie said, "This is already a very rare large mine. Ring crystals are rarely gathered together to form ores. They're usually found in other mines and can be excavated in small amounts. It is very rare to see a mine like this gathered together. I saw the sample, and the quality of the ring crystals is excellent." This sentence lifted the spirits of AI, Qi, and Baspa. The quality was excellent. Baspa said, "The entire mining area security is under my ancestors' charge. This area shouldn't be a big problem. It depends on Brother Lei's restriction. Are there any problems? All right, what do we get in return?" Bai Xie smiled and said, "Go down and dig for 10 days. Only you guys. You can't bring anyone else down." According to Bai Xie, this was a rich mine. In 10 days, he wouldn't dare to say too much, but a few thousand ring crystals wouldn't be a problem. Baspa and AI Qi were very satisfied. Lei Xingfeng was even more so. This wasn't just a ring crystal mine. There were other mineral veins as well. Once the location was fixed, they could come and go as they pleased. Bai Xie said, "Other than the illusory design, Brother Lei has to help me set up a restriction at the entrance of the mine. This is basically a simple restriction. It's a killing formation. Anyone who enters without permission will be killed by the restriction once they enter." Lei Xingfeng said, "That's easy. However, you need to prepare the materials for the killing array." Bai Xie said, "I'll be the one to prepare all the materials." Lei Xingfeng said, "No problem. When do we go?" Bai Xie said, "Give me a list of materials, and I'll go collect them. When you're ready, we'll go over. Also, old man, you have to give old man Ba a heads up in advance so that things won't be difficult." Ba Siba smiled and said, "No problem. As long as you have something to offer, my patriarch is very easy to talk to." Bai Xie nodded. "Everyone will keep this operation a secret." It's better to have less contact with him. As a spy, he naturally had to plant more flowers and less thorns. Only by doing this could he get what he needed. He said, "Since it's like this, let's hurry up and prepare." The three stood up and bid farewell. Bai Xie said, "I'll get someone to send the materials over today. Brother Lei, make as soon as possible. Once you're done, we'll leave." Lei Xingfeng nodded and said, "Don't worry." He was even more anxious than Bai Xie. Stealing things, especially the resources of the Ming-Zhe alliance, was his favorite now. After returning to his room, Lei Xingfeng temporarily put aside the matter they were discussing. Instead, he pondered over the various materials he saw in the database and began to copy them. Every time he went to the database, he would copy what he learned into his Star Python record. When he had time in the future, he would return to the mirror realm. This would be the collection of the Mirror Realm's secret door. Lei Xingfeng didn't dare to delay this matter. He could still remember it clearly now. Once something happened, his memory would be diluted. At that time, it wouldn't be easy to record everything. No matter how good his memory was, under the impact of all kinds of things, he would still forget some things. In the evening, someone delivered 5 to 6 wooden boxes. They were all restriction materials sent by Xia's subordinates. Lei Xingfeng received them and began to design the restriction. There was already a prototype for the psychedelic formation. Lei Xingfeng needed to combine it with the terrain and design it according to the actual needs. The purpose of this psychedelic formation was to make people unable to find the place they wanted to go after entering the restriction formation. In other words, this psychedelic formation was a misdirection formation. It would make people unable to find the location of the mineral vein and not feel the existence of the restriction. This requirement was relatively high. If it was a simple psychedelic formation, Lei Xingfeng could easily make it. However, with this requirement, he had to design it carefully. It was no wonder that Xia didn't trust AI Qi and thought that he didn't have this ability. That was why the task fell to him. In order to seize the time, Lei Xingfeng began to refine the restriction components overnight. After 2 days and 2 nights, he finished refining all the required components. When he finished refining, he suddenly had an idea. Many restriction components were interconnected. If he could refine many common restriction components, he could save a lot of energy and time when designing restrictions in the future. After thinking about it, he felt that it was feasible. However, he didn't have the time to design it right now. He called Kutch and asked him to inform Xia that they could go to Weichong mainland now. At noon, Lei Xingfeng met up with several people. Xia, Baspa, AI Qi, and Lei Xingfeng. There was also one person Lei Xingfeng knew. Uncle Ma also joined the team. AI Qi explained in a low voice. Uncle Ma's elder is in charge of guarding part of the mine. Moreover, he is in the area where they will be moving. They were all familiar with each other. After chatting for a while, they brought their guard through the secret door and arrived at Weichong mainland. This mining area had already been restricted. It was a large-scale restriction defense array. Lei Xingfeng could see that this restriction array was full of loopholes. The nodes were all messed up. He couldn't help but ask, "Old AI, who made this restriction array?" AI Qi shook his head and said, "I don't know either." Xia said, "Old Ba, send someone to contact him. It should be settled, right?" Baspa smiled and said, "It's settled. The last time I went home, I told my elder about this. That area will be open for 2 days. After that, patrols will resume. 2 days. Brother Lei, it should be enough, right?" Lei Xingfeng smiled and said, "It won't take that long. It will be done in 1 day at most." Xia said happily, "Good. The shorter the time, the better. As long as the restriction array can operate smoothly, I don't need too long. I just need to keep it for a year. After a year, there probably wouldn't be anything left here." With the strength that Xia could gather, a year was enough to empty the entire mine. Lei Xingfeng said, "Let me check out the terrain first. You guys pay attention to the surrounding movements." Xia brought his men and spread out. Baspa and AI Qi also brought their men and spread out. However, Uncle Ma left immediately. Lei Xingfeng brought his 4 guards. He leaped onto a big tree and stood on the treetop. He looked into the distance, and his eyes flickered with silver light. In an instant, his expression changed. There were a few huge mine veins. The colorful light that was emitted was simply soaring into the sky. Lei Xingfeng almost drooled. Chapter 641. This mining area was even bigger than the one they secretly dug out last time. There were more varieties and better quality. This place was definitely a treasure trove. At this time, Lei Xingfeng carefully observed the location of the ring crystal mine. With just a glance, he found the exact location of the ring crystal mine. Lei Xingfeng sighed in his heart. As expected of the Ming-Zhe alliance, once they occupied this continent, they occupied all the resources of the continent. His secret sect really couldn't compare. After carefully analyzing the terrain, Lei Xingfeng quickly came up with a plan. He was becoming more and more familiar with seals. After setting up so many seals in the Mingzhe alliance, he was no longer a greenhorn. He had his own ideas and methods regarding seals. Jumping down from the tree, Lei Xingfeng said, "Let's go." Kutch and the other three followed Lei Xingfeng and ran forward. The terrain was very simple. There were a lot of trees, and the terrain was flat. This was very unfavorable for Lei Xingfeng's seal. He couldn't use the terrain to set it up, so he had to use the seal's own power. This was something he had calculated clearly. Lei Xingfeng said, "Kutch, take them and patrol around. If someone comes, send a signal. If it's by Xia and the others, you don't need to notify them." Then he rushed into the forest like a ghost and began to put the seal components into the ground. The seal's design mainly used large areas of trees. As long as someone entered, they would immediately be misled by the trees. They would enter from the left and come out from the right, but they wouldn't be able to find the center. If the entire forest was cut down, then the seal would be exposed. Of course, no one would just cut down the forest for no reason. Lei Xingfeng only used half a day to set up the entire seal. He set up the core of the seal and put in 2 years' worth of ring crystals. Then he found Bai Xia and the others and said, "It's done. Do you want to open it now?" Bai Xia and the others were very surprised. This speed was too fast. AI Chi couldn't help but praise, "Brother Lei, you really are a seal grandmaster." Lei Xingfeng said, "Nonsense. Do you think Sir Green Rock is blind?" AI Chi chuckled and said, "I know, Lord Green Rock is a freak." He had a lot of resentment towards Qing Yin, but he didn't dare to argue with Qing Yin. He could only say a few bad words in front of his friends. Bai Xia said, "Let's start it now." Lei Xingfeng activated the restriction hub and buried it well. This restriction hub was buried 1 meter underground. After burying it with soil, Lei Xingfeng deliberately planted some low shrubs. This way, it would be impossible to find the location of the restriction hub. Only a restriction grandmaster would be able to deduce the approximate location from the restriction nodes. Bai Xia ordered his subordinates, "Go and test it out. Come in from the outside and see if you can reach the center." A dozen subordinates immediately ran out of the forest and entered the forest from the outside. They all got lost. No one could enter the center, and they all ran to the other side of the forest. Bai Xia was very satisfied. He said, "It's done. Haha, I'll see how Uncle Tai will find it. I heard some rumors and brought people to investigate. Unfortunately, we were still 1 step too late." "Haha." AI Chi said, "Okay, let's go and see the ring crystal mine." This was also what Lei Xingfeng wanted to say. He had been busy for so long that he hadn't seen the ring crystal mine, but he had seen the halo in this area. Soon, Baspa also came back. He said, "It's all settled. I have no problems here." When Bai Xia brought everyone to the entrance of the mine, Uncle Ma also rushed back. He said, "I have no problems here either. No one will patrol this area." Lei Xingfeng was very excited. This was a natural ring crystal mine. No matter what, he had to get more. This kind of opportunity was hard to come by. As long as he could enter, there would be many opportunities in the future. Bai Xia said, "Let your subordinates rest over there. We'll go down ourselves." Under the guidance of a cultivator, Bai Xia, Baspa, AI Chi, Lei Xingfeng, and Uncle Ma walked into the mine. Bai Xia explained, "From here, there are only a few ring crystals on the surface. The real mine is buried very deep." After walking for a short distance, they saw a space of 100 square meters. There were dozens of Dao Lord Patriarchs guarding it. There was a huge hole in the ground that was 7 to 8 meters in diameter. It was so dark that they couldn't see anything clearly. Bai Xia said, "This is the mine. Brother Lei wants to set up a killing array." Lei Xingfeng nodded and said, "No problem. How deep is this hole?" Bai Xia said, 300 meters. It's a hole that goes straight up and down. It goes straight into the ring crystal mine. Baspa said, "Big mouth. Let's go down and take a look first. Let's set up the restriction after 10 days. Uncle Tai won't be able to find this place. Of course, if he does, it'll be troublesome." Bai Xia sneered. "Even if he finds this place, he won't be able to bear the consequences. I can't kill him." Uncle Ma said, "Actually, if Uncle Tai finds this place, we can work together." Bai Shia said, "Work together? We'll work together after I've dug it out." Huh. Baspa said, "Forget it. Let's go down first." The few of them followed the vertical hole and directly flew down. Lei Xingfeng noticed that the vertical tunnel was surrounded by stone walls. In other words, there was a layer of rock below. Someone had forced it down. In a few breaths' time, they reached the bottom of the hole. There were many Dao Lord Patriarchs guarding it. A total of 3 tunnels appeared. Bai Shia said, "Everyone can stay in the mine for 10 days. During these 10 days, it'll depend on your own abilities. Take away as much as you can. Also, don't use the illusory hands when digging. It'll destroy the entire mine." Uncle Ma said, "Big mouth, that's not very kind. If we don't use the illusory hands, are we going to use our hands to dig?" Bai Shia said, "I don't care what tool I use, but if I use the phantom hand, its destructive power will be too strong. You all know that ring crystals are very fragile. Once I use the phantom hand, too many ring crystals will be wasted." AI Chi said, "If we don't use them, then don't. We can get a lot just by digging like this. However, Big Mouth, you have to take us to a place rich in ore. Otherwise, it'll be too much of a loss." Bai Shia nodded. "You don't have to worry about that. We're all brothers. We won't let you suffer." Bath said domineeringly, "Lead the way." Lei Xingfeng saw that this mine had just started mining. The 3 tunnels shouldn't be very long. As expected, Bai Shia led them into one of the tunnels. Soon, they arrived at the mining area. There were many people digging inside. They were all low-level cultivators. Not even one true ring sage. Lei Xingfeng asked curiously, "Why don't we use high-level cultivators to dig?" Bai Shia looked at him strangely. AI Chi explained, "High-level cultivators will inevitably hide all the ores. If we use these low-level cultivators, 1, it'll be easier to control them. 2, it'll be easy to check if they're smuggling ores." Lei Xingfeng said, "How do we check? Do low-level cultivators also have hidden Luan spaces?" Bai Shia said, "It's very easy to check. We just need to give them some things and order them to put them into their hidden Luan spaces. Their hidden Luan spaces are very small. Just a little thing can fill it. The volume of the thing put in is enough to take up space. How do you think they're smuggling ores?" Lei Xingfeng said, "Then why don't we just use normal people?" Bai Shia said, "Normal people's efficiency is too low. No matter if it's strength or endurance, they won't be enough." Lei Xingfeng thought for a while and couldn't help but praise. This method was really good. As long as they measured the volume of the cultivator's hidden Luan space, then when they came out, it would be easy to check. If the volume of the item was constant and couldn't be put in the hidden Luan space, then it meant that they were smuggling ores. This method couldn't be used for high-level cultivators' hidden Luan spaces. Once they stepped into true ring sage, their hidden Luan spaces would start to expand. They could store many things. Among them, some people had large hidden Luan spaces while others had small hidden Luan spaces. Bai Shia said, "All right, everyone dig yourselves. I'll go up first. 10 days later, I'll come back to bring everyone out." Everyone took out their digging tools. Since they couldn't use the phantom hand to dig, the tools were very important. Lei Xingfeng wasn't in a hurry to dig. Instead, he checked all 3 tunnels. With his eye's special ability, he could naturally find the best place. And this time, he didn't plan to dig too much. The most important task was to find a point to enter and exit. Basiba, AI Chi, and Grandpa Ma were all digging with all their might. Even if they were hedonistic young masters, this treasure delivered to their doorstep filled them with motivation. Lei Xingfeng wandered back and forth. Very quickly, he chose the side of the tunnel and started digging. Bai Shia had already left. Of course, the others wouldn't pay attention to Lei Xingfeng. Moments later, Lei Xingfeng started digging. With his current strength, his digging speed was crazy. All the rocks and dirt that he dug out were kept in his hidden Luan space. He had other uses for them. In just a moment, Lei Xingfeng dug out a rock layer. This was already 10 meters away from the tunnel. The surroundings were pitch black, but in Lei Xingfeng's eyes, everything was clear. He raised his hand and shot out a bolt of lightning. Instantly, the rock turned to dust and collapsed. Lei Xingfeng used lightning bolts without restraint. There were no ring crystals here. He hadn't dug out any or veins. So even if Bai Xie saw it, he wouldn't say anything. This was because he didn't do it in the mining area. Lei Xingfeng dug out a tunnel of a few hundred meters in less than an hour. At this time, some ring crystals began to appear. The quality was average, and there weren't many of them. This area wasn't suitable for digging. The best mining area was where Ai, Qi, Basiba, and Grandpa Ma were. Chapter 642. Lei Xingfeng did this on purpose. He started to dig at the side of the tunnel, opening up a tunnel. Each tunnel was not long, just like an inexperienced miner trying to find the mining surface of a vein. Lei Xingfeng knew exactly what he was doing. Lei Xingfeng dug one tunnel after another, long and short. The entire tunnel was like a maze. During this time, Ai, Qi, Baspa, and Grandpa Ma all came to see him. Seeing him digging around like a headless fly, they all advised him to go to the mining surface, as it was too much of a waste of time. Lei Xingfeng's words were simple. He wanted to find the best mining surface for ring crystals. On the second day, no one came to bother Lei Xingfeng. They didn't even have time to dig. So who would have the time to persuade Lei Xingfeng? After all, it was only 10 days. When the time was up, no matter how much he earned, he would have to leave on time. Lei Xingfeng dug a few more tunnels. These tunnels all extended to the rock layer. With one look, one could tell that it was dug by someone who didn't know the distribution of veins. It was incomparably stupid and had nothing to do with veins. The best spot was also an extremely poor mining surface, with almost no mining value. Anyone who came to take a look would shake their head. Lei Xingfeng had achieved his goal, so he didn't continue to do such useless work. He went to a rather hidden place and directly set up an extremely simple restriction. No one would be able to see through it at all. Only then did he dig downwards. After a few hours, he had reached the bottom of the vein. His eyes were incomparably sharp, so of course, he wouldn't be ignorant. All the tunnels he dug were used to confuse people. After entering the tunnel, Lei Xingfeng quickly dug. He used an illusory giant hand to peel off the entire mining surface, revealing a large piece of ring crystal ore. Not daring to stay any longer, Xi and Feng turned back and blocked the passage, using the rocks and mud he had stored in his hidden lens space. After completely blocking the passage, he found a few more rocks and stuffed them into the passage, carefully camouflaging it before removing the restriction and leaving with satisfaction. Although the restriction just now was extremely simple, Lei Xingfeng didn't want to leave any traces behind. He used an illusory giant hand to slap around, destroying the entire tunnel outside. The rumbling sound attracted Bai Xie. He said in shock, "Brother Lei, what are you doing?" Lei Xingfeng said with an angry look, "Damn, it's all rocks. I'm so angry." Bai Xie had already come to take a look. He thought that Lei Xingfeng had some special methods to find a good mining surface. However, after seeing it, he knew that this guy was a fool who didn't know anything. He even secretly laughed. The less Lei, the more ring crystals he would leave. Bai Xie comforted, "Let's go to the mining surface. There are more ring crystals there. They have already collected a lot of ores." Xi and Feng had a look of unwillingness. After a while, he spoke, "All right, I don't know anything about mining. I'll listen to you." As he spoke, he followed Bai Xie to the mining area. This was already the third day. In Bai Xie's opinion, Lei Xingfeng had wasted 3 days. Even if he could dig up 500 ring crystals in a day, he had already lost 1,500 ring crystals. It was very pitiful. When they arrived at the mining surface, the low-level cultivators who were originally mining here had already gone to other places. Only Ai, Qi, Baspa, and Grandpa Ma were still mining in full swing. Seeing Lei Xingfeng and Bai Xie coming over, Ai Qi said, "Brother Lei, have you found a high-quality ring crystal mining surface?" Baspa and Grandpa Ma both laughed at his misfortune. Ai Chi said, it's okay, it's okay. There's still 7 days. It's enough for Brother Lay to dig. Grandpa Ma laughed and said, when it comes to seals, we are not as good as you. When it comes to mining, no one is better than a mine explorer. Only a mine explorer has the real ability to determine the location of or seedlings and veins. We can forget about it. Lei Xingfeng said sincerely, yes, I'm crazy about getting rich, so he spread his hands. Everyone laughed. Bai Xia said, it's okay, Brother Lei. You can continue mining. If you need ring crystals in the future, you can tell me. This mine is big enough for us. Grandpa Ma said, you don't say. Mining is really hard work. Why don't I send someone down to dig? Bai Xia said, get lost. If you don't want to dig, then don't dig. What kind of bad idea is that? Baspa and Ai Chi laughed evilly. Of course, the fewer people who knew about this, the better. Everyone knew about mining, but who would know that this was a ring crystal mine? Lei Xingfeng said, let's not talk about it. I have to hurry up and dig. Bai Xia said, okay. Hurry up. There are only 7 days left. Whatever you can dig out is yours. Xian Feng took out a pickaxe, and with a flash of his eyes, he started digging. With a ding-dang sound, a fist-sized ring crystal appeared, and with another ding-dang sound, another ring crystal appeared. Xian Feng chuckled, and under the dumbfounded gazes of the 4 men, he moved the pickaxe as if it was flying. With a ding-dang sound, in just a few minutes, he had dug out a dozen high-quality ring crystals. The smallest one was the size of an apricot, and the largest was the size of a grapefruit. It was simply unbelievable. Bai Xia looked at Lei Xingfeng in a daze. After a while, he said, if I had known, I would have let Brother Lei dig randomly. This is too magical. How did you know the location of the ring crystals? Lei Xingfeng laughed as he dug randomly. Luck. Hearing this, Bai Xia, Baspa, Ai Chi, and Grandpa Ma's eyelids twitched. Wasn't this luck a little too heaven-defying? Lei Xingfeng walked back and forth on the mining surface. From time to time, he would fly up and dig with his pickaxe. Every time, he would gain something. The ring crystals that he obtained were of excellent quality. Bai Xia reacted quickly. This fellow just stood there laughing like a fool. Then, Baspa, Ai Chi, and Grandpa Ma were about to cry. The 3 of them looked at each other. With all the good stuff being taken away, what could they find? Previously, they would occasionally find a high-quality ring crystal, and even a top-quality one. But with Xian Feng digging, the 3 of them couldn't find anything. All of them were ugly, not a single good ring crystal. In just a few hours, the 3 of them started to cry out. Grandpa Ma was the first to give up. He said, no. With Brother Lei digging here, we have no chance. There's still leftovers. But after Brother Lei's digging, we can't even eat leftovers. Baspa said dejectedly, everyone is the same, but this is Brother Lei's ability. What can we do? Hey, Big Mouth, don't laugh foolishly here. Damn, are you watching a joke? Find another mining surface for us. Ai Chi also said, why not? Give us a few more days. Bai Xia laughed. I already said that this is Brother Lei's ability. You guys don't have the ability. Who can you blame? Grandpa Ma slapped his thigh and said, But this is too sad. After digging for so long, all I got were ordinary or low-quality ring crystals. Why don't you give me some ready-made ones? I won't dig anymore. Baspa also said this won't do. Big Mouth, why don't you divide us into sections? Each of us will be in charge of a section. Otherwise, we won't be able to do anything. The entire mining surface was about 50 meters long and 10 meters high. It was a slanted surface. This was a mining spot that contained a large amount of ring crystals. Bai Xia didn't lie to them. It was indeed a good mining surface. But Lei Xingfeng was too ruthless. His foresight was special. He could see what others couldn't see. That was why he was able to dig out the best. Bai Xia said, divide? You need Brother Lei's permission. Otherwise, you guys are bullying him. Baspa, Ai Chi, and Grandpa Ma all looked at Lei Xingfeng. But Lei Xingfeng didn't even discuss with them. He couldn't wait to dig and wouldn't waste time talking. He was like a hard-working bee, flying around the mining surface. When he found an opportunity, he would dig with his hoe and obtain a good ring crystal. Baspa said, Brother Lei, come down and discuss something. Lei Xingfeng shouted, I'm not free. I want to make up for the 3 days I lost. Bai Xia laughed. Baspa, Ai Chi, and Grandpa Ma were speechless. The three of them looked at each other. Baspa said, What do we do? Grandpa Ma said, What do we do? Salad. Unless we divide it into sections, we won't get anything in the next 7 days. Ai Chi said, Is there any mining surface? Just dig them out separately. Even if there was a mining surface, Bai Xia wouldn't let them go. Lei Xingfeng was taking on the three of them. Bai Xia couldn't take it. He said, You guys settle it yourselves. There are no other mining surfaces. This is the only place. I can't do anything about it. He turned and left. Baspa rushed over and hugged Bai Xia. He said, Big mouth, you can't leave. Bai Xia looked at him with a half-smile and said, First, this isn't something I can solve. I provided all I can. Second, Brother Lei didn't cheat when he dug the ring crystals. He has the ability, so you can't blame him. Of course, you can't blame me either. So, you guys can stay here and dig. Baspa scolded this bastard's big mouth. He could only watch Bai Xia leave. Lei Xingfeng observed carefully. This layer of high-quality ring crystals had been swept clean by him. He smiled and flew down. He said, Why aren't you digging anymore? It was necessary to play dumb. Ai Chi couldn't help but roll his eyes. He said, Brother Lei, you're too ruthless. The good ones have all been dug up. What are we digging for? Grandpa Ma said, Yeah, you should leave some for us. Baspa said, Brother Lei, that's too bad for us. I'm not interested in the next 7 days. Xi and Feng laughed. How about this? Let's work together to dig. What do you think? But the premise is that everyone has to listen to my orders. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.